is a donation of non-perishable food items or $5. And although I've already mentioned this, I do think it's a quick reminder that on Thursday in the Coolidge Corner Library at 6:30 p.m., there'll be a presentation from the Kennedy National Historical Site, which chronicles the development of the Coolidge Corner neighborhood, including the neighborhood around Beale Street where the Kennedy home is. Saturday, March 23rd at 3 p.m. at Newbury College at 129 Fisher Avenue, the Friends of Fairstead will be hosting a program with the authors of a book, Community by Design, which is about how the Olmsted firm of landscape architects influenced the development of the town of Brookline. And our former preservation chief planner is one of the co-authors. On Sunday, March 24th, the Brookline Historical Society will hold a program at the former Free Hospital for Women at 60 Glen Road, and will make a presentation on the history and the contributions of the hospital. Reservations are required because space is limited. There'll be 2 sessions, one at 12:30 p.m. and one at 2 p.m. And finally, the Board of Selectmen will meet on Wednesday next week, not Tuesday, Wednesday, March 27th, in recognition of the observance of Passover. Other members of the board have things they wish to announce? Yes, Selectman Daly.
No, I just want to say, I think all of us last night were at the Women's Commission. They gave out their award for Woman of the Year to Rita McNally, and that was very touching. But they also want to say that they had asked students in the, I think it was the, 5th, 6th, and 7th grades to write essays about women who inspire them. And they had the first top three winners in each of those grades. And they were wonderful essays. I think we all really enjoyed them. And it was the unusual thing this year was several people writing about their sisters.
As an older sister, nice. I appreciated that.
Yeah. But, and there were some writing about their grandmothers who'd been through, very trying circumstances, and a number of them writing about their teachers, which was nice. But they were great essays. The kids were wonderful writers, and it was very touching.
It was great.
Hear what they had to say.
Wonderful event.
And there was a remembrance of Estelle Cates, who was founder of the Women's Commission.
And a nice performance by Perfect Pitch,
yes.
the a cappella girls group from the high school.
Yeah, right. It was a wonderful event, very, very well attended. And I hope for the young people who were there, it gave the girls and women in the room real inspiration about what they can become. I think that's really important. So, Selectman Benka, you had another item?
Since we'll be meeting on Wednesday next week, it would be a little bit late to mention this. Next Wednesday, the 27th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Brookline Senior Center, there will be a senior Charlie card event. Where seniors will be able to go and renew their MBTA senior Charlie cards. And seniors will need a photo ID with their date of birth, but again, it will be 1 to 3 p.m. next Wednesday at the Senior Center for senior Charlie cards.
Very nice for the Senior Center to host things like that because it saves having to travel to get your card. Okay, we ready for our regular calendar? The first item is the minutes from March 12th. Are there corrections or additions to the minutes?
I do have some small edits.
Okay, then I move that we approve the minutes from March 12th as amended. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daly?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item is the work order. I think we have yes, Mr. Ditto. Timely request for supplemental snow plowing funding.
Yes, I'm standing in for Andy. He's a little under the weather.
Sure.
And this extra work order is made up of basically 2 parts. Of the $312,262 is to bring us whole as of last week, and the $50,000 additional is what we hope will get us through this winter and into the spring. As you may recall, on February 12th, you voted to enact Chapter 44, Section 31D, which allows us to overspend our budget.
And were we, overnight, do you feel like we had enough folks out there getting the job done?
Yeah, I spoke to Kevin Johnson this morning, and he felt it was pretty good. He's got some cleanup work to do tonight, so I think that'll complete it.
Good. Selectman Daley.
I just want to ask about that. It's supposed to go down below freezing tonight, and right now, there's a lot of mush all over the place because of the sort of freezing rain on top of snow. So are they putting down some sand and?
Yeah, they're going to be out there there's going to be 6 Bobcats out working around the schools, and with the pickup trucks, they'll have the sand and salt they can throw down by hand.
Well, I think we're all pretty tired of this weather.
Right. I am.
First day of spring, right?
Coming up.
No, today.
Is today?
Today, I thought it was.
Really? I thought it was the 20th.
Spring is sprung.
I'm ready for it, but I'm not believing in it right now. All right, any other questions for Mr. Ditto? I move that we approve extra work order number 1 in the amount of $312,000 for work completed by D'Alessandro Corp. In connection with snow plowing and ice control. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley.
Aye.
Selectman Benka.
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditto. And then we have a whole series of wine and malts. Are there questions from any member of the board? Otherwise, I would like to take C, D, and E as a group, unless you have questions about those 3 items. All right, then I'm going to move.
I just wanted to mention one of them is a fundraiser for the Brookline Education Foundation, which does a lot of great work, sort of filling in gaps that the school budget can't
Well, then you might as well say what it is and when.
It's a Trivia Bee fundraiser on March 22nd, 7 p.m. To 10 p.m. at the Heath School.
And there will apparently be wine and malt beverages there.
Right, yes.
Apparently
Which will
so.
be an added attraction.
I assume this is for adults. All right, I move that we grant a temporary wine and malt beverage license to the Brookline Education Foundation for a Trivia Bee fundraiser on March 22nd at the Heath School. And I move that we grant a temporary wine and malt beverage license to Pine Manor College in connection with a reception on March 20th. And I move that we grant a temporary all-kinds alcoholic beverage license to the Lars Anderson Auto Museum in connection with a museum lecture night on March 21st. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley.
Aye.
Selectman Benka.
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And finally, we have an item which is a renewal of the alcoholic beverage license, which is a seasonal license at the Grill on the Green Vine Ripe Grill at the Putterham Golf Course. This is a seasonal license. We are allowed to license it annually, and this would take effect from April 1st through January 15th of 2014. And since this is a renewal, I'm going to request that we also modify the liquor license to specify alcoholic beverage hours. The current licensing is basically accepting the maximum hours that are permitted, and therefore what the current license reads is Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and I'm going to request that we change that from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, I would amend it to say 10 a.m. until 11 p.m., and on holidays from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. In other words, the opening hours are now listed as 8 a.m., and I'm proposing that they be changed to 10 a.m.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Betsy, could you read those times again
Yeah,
in the
and
days?
it's on the license page. If you look at the last sheet, you'll see at the bottom under where it says seating capacity 60.
Right.
I'm proposing that Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. be changed to 10 a.m. Friday and Saturday, 8 a.m. be changed to 10 a.m. Now,
Did the licensee get notice that you were planning on changing this?
nope. Their operating hours,
Yeah, I'm actually looking also, Betsy, at the end of the day. We have a March 13th memo from Chief O'Leary that on Monday to Thursday, they're open 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., not 10 p.m.
that's interesting, because that's a change from what's written on the license. I
So-
missed that.
Yeah.
Well, we could
I'm
hold the
wondering-
item and make sure that we get clear.
We do have time. If it's April 1st, we
Yeah.
could do it next week.
We could do it next week.
And
I accept that.
Well, I just think they should, I assume 10 a.m. is fine, but I don't know if they do any special.
Well, the truth is, what we do not know is their actual hours of operations, which
Right.
we really need to understand. I
was
think
gonna
that's
say,
the
I
issue.
appreciate, Chairman DeWitt, your new movement to make the liquor license hours agree with the CV license.
With this, right, with the food service, really, is
But-
what it should be.
Right, but I also want to point out that this is the golf course, and the patterns of liquor license, differ somewhat from the usual
Are you saying that people
restaurateur.
drink beer and golf at breakfast time at 8 a.m.?
Yeah, I'm saying that Bloody Mary and golf is probably more likely scenario than it would be in your average
Well,
restaurant.
sometimes they have special events, too. That's just what I wondered about.
Well,
When they have-
That's quite possible. It would surprise me if they're serving alcohol at 8 a.m., but we can certainly check.
But
We ought to-
I think the suggestion that we consult with the licensee is probably a good one.
Yeah, right, okay. Then we'll hold this one for next week. Okay, then the next item is some transfers in the Planning and Community Development Department budget. Ms. Bruton.
Good evening, Kara Bruton for the Planning Department. And also Rosemary Foy is stuck on the Mass Pike with all of the traffic.
Oh.
She's on the Preservation Commission. She wanted to be here because she knew we were going to talk about the historic map tonight as part of this
Oh.
request. So,
And I would just like to say, we have a separate conversation starting about archiving materials, but I'm very pleased to find that the map is being conserved.
yeah, so I'll go over the couple items in front of you. This is a request for a transfer of funds within our department's budget for this current fiscal year. So it's money that we already have. We have saved some money by not having a director in place for several months. And we're quite confident by transferring this funds from the salary account to some of these one-time expenses, we'll still have plenty of leftover money in case something strange comes up between now and the end of June. So just to walk through a couple of the items, the first one is a transfer of $3,800 from salary funding towards equipment. That's for additional storage space. We did spend a lot of the summer cleaning out and weeding through some of our files in the attic. With the closure of Fisher Hill, we do need more storage for some of our housing programs, and we're going to do that in our printing room. But we need those large filing cabinets that they kind of build in, and that's likely going to be quite expensive. So that's the first item. The second item is for $18,500, and that would be a transfer to professional technical services. This is actually three different things. The first two items are associated with the work that the Waldo Street Area Study Committee is doing as we speak. The committee chaired by Selectmen Banka and DeWitt is going along well. We're now at a point where we're ready to hire a consultant, two different types of consultant, one doing financial scenarios to see what different types of future uses might work here from a financial point of view, similar to what we did at the Davis Path Committee. That's estimated at about $5,000. The other work is for a preservation but structural engineer, architect, cost estimating team to look at the Durgan Garage on the behalf of the town, going inside, looking at how the floor plates are different, trying to identify what future uses might work on the building. And this is something that the committee is interested in the town having our independent consultant do now, so that as we move forward and talks with Chestnut Hill Realty, we'll understand what's realistically potentially feasible for the Durgan Garage moving forward. There's also some funding for the conservation of an 1852 map, which you have a lot of pictures in your packets. This was a map that was in the attic that I was talking about earlier, and is one of these things that, you know, we can't put it into a filing cabinet.
I just want to point out, unfortunately, we did not get the pictures, but you might want to consider if they're available to be sent around by email.
Sure.
Is that possible?
Yeah,
No.
absolutely.
Or, actually, it might be interesting for people to see this map if you could post it online,
Sure.
if in its present condition. They don't give us the pictures, Kara. They don't give us the pictures.
We're, right, we're trying to conserve paper.
So this is there's three pictures that I'm passing around. The one's the overall map as it is in its current condition. It looks like it was part of a roller set like we used to have with the maps in, you know, social studies class where all the maps roll up. This one was done in 1852. It's full color. It's an F.W. Shields map of the city and vicinity of Boston. What's interesting about it is it does show in quite good detail Brookline, including houses that were there at the time in 1852, streets, rivers, pathways. So it's a great piece for Brookline to have. I'd say Brookline's about this big on the map. So what we'd like to do is have this restored so that the cracking and the acid that's caused from the paper that's mounted on now stops. So they'll take the map actually off the paper, put it on linen paper, and then put the whole thing into a museum quality frame, and we'll have it in the planning department for anybody to look at. This is something that the Preservation Commission, and again, Rosemary Foy wanted to be here, you know, feels like this is a very important piece of Brookline history that we want to protect and preserve. We certainly don't want it to keep being in our attic with nobody to look at and continuing to deteriorate. I can tell you that I was looking at the same map of what it sells for on the free market on eBay or antique dealers, and maps once restored, this map once restored, but with cracks and, you know, in similar condition as this one will be, sold for $3,500. So just to give you a sense of what the free market thinks this is worth, but of course to preservationists and to our historians, it's invaluable and we should restore it. So that's the historic artifact. And then the last item we have.
Brochures.
Brochures. This is a small item. It's $1,000. The planning department in the past worked with building and health, fire, police to do it, how to open a restaurant guide. It's a very simple 8-page guide. We want to reprint that, update it, and also do a how to open a business guide more generally. We've especially gotten a lot of requests for home-based businesses, and we're working on ways to streamline that process, make sure that they get their DBA license with the town clerk, and that it's easy enough for them to do quickly. So,
Sounds helpful. Questions for Ms. Bruton? Yes, Selectman Benka.
Actually, a comment. There may be a little tug of war about where that map ends up.
Are you laying claim,
No,
Selectman
no,
Benka?
I suspect the selectmen may want it up in their office as opposed to the planning department. But I think it's a wonderful idea to restore it and stop the deterioration that's been going on. And I commend you for not just putting it back in the corner.
right, letting it have more dust. We also are getting a high quality, I forgot to say this, a high quality photograph of it done.
Oh, good.
So people can download it, or we can even, you know, sell for $1, 11 by 17 versions of it if
Super.
people want it.
Selectman Daley?
I'm wondering now, having looked at that little sample you gave us and seeing that there are landowners named Coolidge, was Coolidge Corner not named after Calvin Coolidge, but the family that owned property? And
Coolidge Brothers
Yeah,
Pharmacy.
Coolidge Brothers Business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was
Griggs
assumed,
are in here.
I was
There
just
are all
assumed
kinds
it
of
had
names.
something to do with Calvin Coolidge, but now I know.
Um,
The more famous local
Where
Coolidges.
the SS Pierce building
Yeah.
was the Coolidge Brothers General
Dry goods or
Dry
something like
goods
that, I
store,
think? Yeah, right. Selectman Goldstein, you had a comment?
I do, about the Waldo Garage Durgan Street study. So, it's, maybe it's a good time for an update from the co-chair of Selectmen about that, because I'm a little bit, I understand that Chestnut Hill Realty has now acquired the whole site, and are they participating with us about these studies?
We were going to ask Ms.
Are
Bruton to
they-
give us a sort of overall update of projects that are out there, because there's actually quite a lot of new information. I don't know if you're prepared right now, Ms. Bruton, to talk about all of them. She and I've talked about when she would come, there are at least 4 different things that have had some changes.
Well,
So,
Let me,
if you want to
it
hear
seems to me
very
we're
briefly.
doing this work, to explore possibilities for Chestnut Hill Realty, but they've now acquired the site, and are they waiting to hear what we have to find out about this, or are they proceeding with their own plans?
If I could respond, and Kara and Betsy, if you want to
Go ahead.
either expand or correct what I say. Representatives of Chestnut Hill Realty actually were gracious enough to come to the last Waldo Durgan Committee meeting, which had full committee attendance and a lot of the neighbors from that area in attendance also. And Chestnut Hill Realty told us that they have no immediate plans for the property. They're really open to suggestions and comments from the town and from the neighbors. One of the things that we did with the Red Cap site, as Kara mentioned, was to do an economic feasibility study to try to get some idea of what uses of the property might have market viability and what wouldn't, to provide guidance to the town in their discussions with the property owner and in their discussions with potential developers. So that's really the first study. The second study is one that is focused on the Durgan Garage, and there's a very strong desire among members of the committee, people in the neighborhood, preservationists, to try to preserve the garage, or at least to try to preserve the facade of the garage, which is really quite distinctive and striking. And the garage construction is a concrete construction built as a parking garage and built with, as far as we know, the facade woven into the floor. And the question really is going to be what can be done realistically to preserve the garage structure, use the garage structure, or if you can't use the inside, to preserve the facade. And the committee felt that it was important for the committee to have its own consultant look at those issues to see what might be feasible and what isn't feasible, so that as we go forward in this process with Chestnut Hill Realty, with possible zoning changes proposed to town meeting, that the town have its own sources of information.
And just a footnote, the engineering firm is in fact experienced dealing with historic structures, so they're not just engineers looking at the property, but they're people who are familiar with the concrete construction techniques of this period, and we hope at least will be very well qualified to let us know what the possibilities for the structure and the building are.
One further comment.
Yeah.
And Kara contacted Chestnut Hill Realty, asked them to give this consultant access to the building, and they have agreed to let the consultant come in and inspect and do whatever is necessary to make his determination in the building.
Great.
So it's really a cooperative process at this point, enabling the town to gather information.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had a summary of the transfers, and I'll just add my own little footnote about archiving, because both the equipment, additional storage, as well as conservation of the map are items that we hope to be able to talk about as we'll get a little consulting time from an archivist to help us understand how we can best preserve and store all of our documentation. And the Olmsted Hill material is brand new and is just going into storage. And we want to be sure that if there are pieces of data there, or pieces, objects that need special care, we know what to do with them, because we don't want any more ancient maps to be deteriorating because of benign neglect, I guess I would say. So, all right, having said that, I move that we approve the appropriation transfers within the FY13 Planning and Community Development Departmental budget as listed in the calendar. I'm not going to read these out except to say $3,800 for equipment, $18,500 for professional technical services, $1,000 for printing. Is that all of them?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item is also from planning and has to do with transferring funds from Cdbg. Mr. Viola. And I note that we got a letter about sequestering and cutting more out of Cdbg funds. These funds wouldn't be affected, though. These are from prior years.
Right, correct. These are 3 years' worth of prior year affordable housing program funds. The agenda item is actually, we're asking the board to authorize the chair to execute a request for release of funds and certification for those 3 years' worth of affordable housing program funds. You may have noticed in the packet I included the legal notice.
Right.
We've undertaken a joint notice process with the City of Newton, who are currently completing the same process for home funds. This document serves as certification to HUD that we've gone through an environmental review process and that we've allowed for public comment, if any, related to the use of Cdbg funds and home funds in the 86 Dummer Street project that the BHA is currently undertaking. The 18-day public comment period has lapsed without comment. An execution of this document by both Brookline and Newton is the first step of 2 steps before we will actually be able to use the funding for the project.
Okay, questions for Mr. Viola? I think this is pretty straightforward, even though it's complicated. Okay, then I move that we authorize the chairman to sign a request for release of funds and certification for the 86 Dummer Street project as follows: from Cdbg funding to affordable housing program. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Whoops. Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And Mr. Viola, you also are here about bike share. Another, I guess this is a request for an extension.
Simply a request for an extension. The CMAQ funds that we're using, CMAQ is congestion mitigation air quality funds that we're receiving through Mass DOT. We use them for fees, launch fees associated with, with Alta, the operator, putting the equipment on the streets.
For Hubway.
For Hubway. And as well, it's for their operational fees that go along with this, with running a bike share system every month. So CMAQ basically pays for all of those fees. Town fronts the money. We put in a reimbursement request every month after we pay for those expenses. So quite simply, the contract runs out March 31st. It lapses at the end of March, and DOT's advises that in order to keep spending the money, we need to extend it for another year. And that's my request, is that the board authorize and approve the chair to execute the extension.
Selectman Benka.
Yeah, two questions. Are grants of extension like this basically pro forma?
Yes.
Good, okay. And second question is, where is the fourth station going to be?
Actually, this year, there'll be 4 stations. There'll actually be one move from Town Hall to Washington Square.
Okay.
And there'll be an additional bike station on Harvard Street, near the intersection of Thorndike. So we'll actually have 2 on-street bike stations this year. We brought that up with the Transportation Board, I believe, back in February.
Okay.
So we are launching one station. There won't be a station this year at Town Hall. It really
But it'll just be a
it's
block
being
or
moved, yes.
a block away.
Well, it'll be,
No.
Station
No.
Street. Wasn't there one on Station
the
Street?
one at Station
Yeah.
Street will remain.
Oh,
There'll be a
okay.
new one in Washington Square on the inbound side,
Okay.
and the
We're
new.
losing the one
so-
in front of Town Hall.
Yes,
So it'll be
we're losing
Right,
one in
yeah.
Station Street,
Station
Washington
Street.
Square,
Washington Square, Coolidge Corner.
Yep.
And, what am I forgetting?
Thorndike and Harvard.
Thorndike?
Thorndike and Harvard,
Thorndike and Harvard.
Okay.
which is
good.
to say just north of Devotion.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Then I move that we approve and authorize the chairman to execute a contract extension with the Mass Department of Transportation for congestion mitigation and air quality funds to be used for continued operation of the Brookline Bike Share Project, to be extended from March 31st, 2013 to March 31st, 2014. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley.
Aye.
Selectman Benka.
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Viola.
Great, thank you.
Could I just hold
Yep.
for one? I noticed that Fran Price was conferring. Was there a problem with the previous vote?
A slight adjustment, if the board would be so willing, just to make sure that the actual language of the vote for item H, the funding is already in place in the Cdbg Affordable Housing Program. We just want to make sure that the vote has language that the text says at the beginning that we're actually requesting a release of funds to HUD and the certification that's in your packets to be authorized. We just want to make sure that language is in the vote.
Okay.
All right, now, does that mean you want us to reconsider, or is that language that we can ask to be incorporated?
Let me just, as voted, as listed in the agenda, and I would say that as voted, it was to authorize the chairman to sign a request for release of funds and certification for the 86 Dummer Street project as follows. And then from CDBG funding to affordable housing program with the fiscal year. How would you like that changed?
We're asking for the funds that are being released. The request, the notice, the form you have that we've asked
Right.
the chair to sign reflects that the 3 years' worth of affordable housing program money, the B10, B11, and B12, we're asking for those funds to be released to be able to be used in the 86 Dummer Street project. I don't know if the vote reflects that language, but the money is,
Yeah.
it's not going anywhere. It's currently been programmed through the affordable housing program, but HUD requires us to include in the request of release of funds which funds we're actually using for the project.
All right, that will be incorporated into the vote.
That's- and I think that was
If
in
it's
the
in the
vote.
calendar, it's in the vote. We didn't say it in,
Well, I think
think
they
it's
want
out
the
loud.
words and authorize the release of such funds instead
well,
of
it
just.
says a request for release.
I think we'd be fine if we just, if you look at the language, again, that's in the calendar, if you just delete that word "to," then we'd get there, because what we're trying to say is this funding is already in CDBG funding affordable housing. We're not transferring that money
So
to.
we're
We
taking
want
it.
to
Fine.
release it.
We want to release it to.
We just want to release it from CDBG.
Well, no,
So
for
what I
affordable
think
housing.
the thing is, it's this is talking about you have to sign a request for
Right,
release of
right.
funds that goes to HUD for CDBG, right?
This certifies.
And in
yeah.
addition, they want us to actually release the funds to be used on the Dummer Street project.
Perfect.
So that's a two-part thing.
Okay, so
All
it'll be a
right.
question of authorizing the chairman to sign a request for release of funds and certification for the 86 Dummer Street project, and to release funds as follows with, is that,
That's fine.
and that'll do the trick?
Yep,
And
that
then,
would be it.
and then the three accounts listed?
Perfect.
And not
For the
say,
affordable housing program? Do you want that in?
we,
And to release funds,
Or
or from
to-
the,
We're asking to release funds from the affordable housing program.
to
be
the
able to
Dummer
be
Street
used
project?
Toward the Dummer Street project.
fine,
Okay.
okay. Fine.
Okay.
For the 80, yeah.
So it would be from CDBG funding affordable housing program to Dummer Street project, right?
Okay.
I don't
So-
think you need CDBG funding in there at all. I think you gotta just release.
Do we need CDBG at all? Do we just say affordable housing?
I think affordable housing is really
Program.
where the money is coming from.
Okay, right, so we take out CDBG funding and we just say from affordable housing program for Dummer Street, from those accounts, right?
As long as the accounts are referenced, I think that would cover
Okay.
the
All right,
intent
how
of the
about
contract.
486 Dummer Street then?
Okay. So authorizing the chairman to sign a request for release of funds and certification, and to release funds from the affordable housing program accounts listed there for the Dummer Street project.
Okay,
I think that will work.
Okay, done.
Thank you.
Kate,
Do we-
you
should we
with us?
Why don't we
Yeah, we have to
reconsider?
reconsider.
Okay.
I'll move reconsideration.
All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, Selectman Benka, having drafted, why don't you move it?
So let me move to authorize the chairman to sign a request for release of funds and certification, and to release funds from the affordable housing program accounts as listed in item H for the 86 Dummer Street project.
All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, I think we voted the, we do have one item on the calendar, which turns out not to be an item on the calendar, but because it's of some interest, perhaps the town administrator would tell us what it is and why we don't have it anymore.
Well, the town was approached yesterday by a movie production company with a very quick request to film at the town hall tomorrow, Wednesday. And this was going to be, the town hall was going to be used as a simulated courthouse scene. And so we spent a fair amount of time talking about the conditions for that and negotiating the financial consideration. And we're prepared to recommend approval of an agreement for filming at the town hall tomorrow. But as it turns out, the snowfall that occurred over the last night and this morning was not conducive to the scene that they were trying to portray in this movie. And so the request has been withdrawn.
Apparently, they weren't planning on snow for this film, and
Correct.
we no longer qualify.
I don't think any of us were planning on snow at this
Right.
this late in
Okay,
March.
so that item is basically withdrawn. And then we'll move forward to the next item on the calendar, which is the Planning and Community Development Departmental Budget. Ms. Bruton, welcome back.
Thank you. So I thought I would start with an overall budget picture for the Department of Planning. And I know you all have the budget books. Do you have them with you, just to follow along
Yeah.
a little bit? So big picture, we're asking for a less than 5% increase with level staff FTEs. And I'll note that the funding for fiscal year 14 does include money to hire a department head. So I am pleased to see that
Good.
that is in the budget. You'll see in the budget statement that we are assuming a slight, like less than 5% reduction in CDBG charge-offs. for the staff. We're hearing from our contacts, legislators, HUD officials, CDBG colleagues. We feel fairly confident in assuming basically level funding from this current fiscal year to next fiscal year. And I can go more into detail about why we feel comfortable with that if you'd like. We also know that although the FY14 looks like it'll be flat funding from federal dollars, that because of the 2011 Budget Control Act, we expect to see 5 to 10% cuts every year for the next 10 years following fiscal 2014. So we don't have an immediate concern, but we are trying to get our ducks in a row to plan for future years. So therefore, we looked at making sure that our staff costs, that different staff people were either on or off CDBG funding based on their current workload and what type of tasks they're currently working on to make sure that we're as prepared as we can for the future. So some of these are internal changes that really don't show up in the budget that you have, but just as an example, if you turn to page, I guess room number 4, page 39, there's a summary of sub-program costs, and you'll see there's 4 areas. Planning administration is one, economic development, housing, and preservation. You'll notice that the personnel cost for personnel in planning and admin goes down, and the cost for housing program goes up slightly, but those are really just kind of internal bookkeeping of, whether Joe Violas, who's the assistant director for community development and housing, is accounted for in administration or housing. The bottom line is between those two subgroups, we are reducing personnel costs for planning and housing together. You will see what looks like a significant increase in preservation of $40,000 in personnel costs. That is not because we are hiring more staff. It is because our preservation planners, we are trying to get them off of CDBG funding, which means that it's costing the town more, even though it's the same staff people in place.
Okay.
Let's see. So moving beyond CDBG funding, you'll notice on the next page of line items, there's a very small number of $5,000 that we are getting as reimbursement for some of the work that our senior planner is doing on the Green Community Grant funding. So there is this $5,000 offset from one of our grants to help offset her salary, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. As you'll see in the accomplishments and objectives, Laura recently completed the administration of $494,000 that the town got from an energy block grant that was used for both town-owned properties as well as individual residential properties. And you might remember that was part of the Green Homes Brookline campaign that's still going on. And she's now able to turn her attention on to a $215,000 grant because we're a green community. Once that's spent down, we can then access more funding. So that's one of our biggest accomplishments from this last year. Other examples that the planning department has worked on, Joe Viola launched Hubway, as you were just talking about. We were only open for a couple weeks last season, and we already have over 100 members just in North Brookline who are Hubway members. So we see this taking off. Hubway is also an example of one of the things that the Collins Center report asked the planning department to look at as far as getting staff to work in different divisions. The new economic development planner, who technically works for an economic development division, is starting to help Joe with Hubway as far as getting businesses to accept where Hubway stations are moving, perhaps thinking about longer-term funding for the program in future years. Another accomplishment, we closed on Fisher Hill, or Olmsted Hill up in Fisher Hill, which was really great and a lot of hard work from Fran Price over the years. Preservation is finishing some baseline research for Chestnut Hill North and Harvard Avenue local historic districts, and they are getting help from our new planner hire, who is helping them with some of the preservation mapping. So this is, again, trying to get junior staff to do more than just one division. We had a lot of progress with utilizing EDAB members, the Economic Development Advisory Board, in helping business associations this year, which was, again, a recommendation from the Collins Center. and we hope to report back to the Selectmen in the next couple months for an update. But just in case you haven't already heard, there is a Shop Local campaign that has started in Brookline. Washington Association has reinvented itself this year. We have EDAB members that are on the Chamber of Commerce board now, and that are also on the Local First board. For the first time, we had an EDAB meeting with the Brookline Neighborhood Alliance, and there's a lot of good energy that I think you'll see in the next couple months as far as what we might recommend together as partners in helping our existing businesses thrive in Brookline. Other accomplishments, the Waldo Street Committee, which we spoke about, I'll go ahead and launch into the other couple development sites if you want, Betsy, at this time.
Sure.
The Circle Cinema site, which is projected to bring in another $400,000 once completed. It has been stuck in the City of Boston permitting process. They, as you all probably know, they recently submitted their what's called a draft project impact report. They will be getting another scoping session with the City of Boston, our transportation folks, and Beta, the consulting arm, as well as Steve Hyken, who's heading up the DAT for this. We'll be having a joint meeting with Boston, I believe, the first week of April, so you'll be hearing more about it ramping up again. There is a key kind of question that was left off on the Brookline side last October, well, a couple questions, two of them being, does the site entrance where it's located make the most sense? And secondly, does internal site circulation work the way it was proposed? So the DAT had, I think 2 meetings, and they were looking to get answers on those kind of very basic questions first. I expect that in the first couple weeks of April, between our transportation guys, Beta Engineering, and Boston recommendations, we'll then be able to move forward with kind of less moving parts as the DAT takes up the Circle Cinema site again. 2 Brookline Place is very much not being built as we speak, which is not good. That is something that in out years, we are counting in the town's financial plan for more than $1 million of additional tax revenue, so it's a very significant project. Charles Weinstein from Children's Hospital did come in and speak with us, I think 2 weeks ago or a week or 2 ago, and in the next couple of weeks we'll be seeing plans for a new version of redeveloping 2 Brookline Place. It's likely to be smaller, and it's likely to get started in the next couple of years. So that's I haven't seen any plans. I don't know anything more than that. It's going to be medical office or back office, but a little bit smaller from what was originally permitted. The Red Cab site, this is an interesting story. We had 2 developers go through and permit different versions on the Red Cab site on Boylston Street. The projected tax revenue could be somewhere around $300,000 to $400,000, but more importantly, it's an anchor of that kind of dead space that we see right now along Route 9, and it's been empty since Polly Selco can remember. I mean, for like 20 years coming up, it's just been vacant.
I bought a table, an outdoor table from there about 25 years ago when it was a sort of satellite for a kind of outdoor landscape place. And Wisconsin, yes, you're right, you got it. I don't think there's been anybody there since then.
No, I've been inside. There's still green astroturf where they used to
Yes, I remember the green astroturf.
Yeah, there's green astroturf and red cab doors, and that's about it. That site is not under contract, but is under a due diligence period with a developer who's looking to use the new zoning that we wrote, that Dick Benka chaired with the Davis Path Committee. So cross our fingers, we don't know for sure, but that could be a good example of, the town just needs to do long-term planning for what's good for the town, and eventually the developer will come around that wants to do what the town's vision is. So hopefully that'll be getting going soon.
Does that include the other parcel, that more than just the red cab? Does it include the other parcel that was sort of stimulated the Selectman Benka's efforts?
Yeah, it'll include the town-owned parcel, that little piece, as well as across Kerrigan Place. It may or may not include the chunk parcel, depending on how
Right.
discussions move forward. But what we're hearing is they, right now, are feeling comfortable they could do with or without the chunk parcel.
So is that something other than the extended stay hotel that I've been hearing about?
I'm sure that's what you've been hearing, and that's certainly what the zoning would be best used for, but they have not come forward with specific plans.
So, just to summarize,
Yeah.
there were actually 4 major potential projects that are somewhere in the pipeline. And Kara, just based on the status that the information we have at the moment, can you order them kind of in a timeline, what you think might be moving first, second, third, fourth? Or maybe all slow. I mean, you can say that too.
Yeah, this would be a complete guess, but I would guess the Circle Cinema, then 2 Brookline Place, Red Cab, and then the Durgan Garage. I mean, but that's just a guess based
Sure.
on what we know today.
Right.
I'll also note that as part of the indicators, we have for a long time kept track of EDAB-sponsored projects, which, goes back to the work that's been done over the years. One thing that may not be obvious here is that we are also seeing an increase, starting especially this current fiscal year and next fiscal year, of more than $180,000 from a small expansion at 10 Brookline Place, when EDAB worked to keep the Art Institute here and Dana-Farber to expand in place. So that was, a major impact project, but it was nothing like what we hear about with these other projects. At the time it was constructed, it was one of 5 properties that were sold that year. It was when the economy was the most low, and Brookline was right up there in the list with some of the LMA properties, Longwood Medical Area properties. Another thing we did this past year is we did adjust the fee structure for planning and zoning permits that you all, for preservation and planning permits that you all approved. This was another recommendation by the Collins Center report. And then moving on to objectives, many of the objectives that we have for next fiscal year also keeps taking on some of the Collins Center recommendations. There's themes of efficiency, more information technology being used to reduce the workloads where we can for our regulatory staff. You'll note that there's some language, especially with the Cdbg program, on getting more streamlined processes online to keep the paperwork down within the planning department. And with GOTMS and preservation, that's especially important, where we need to improve our enforcement capabilities, which may not require more staffing, but just a better workflow within and between departments. So those are some objectives for next year that I wanted to highlight.
Can I mention that I think the idea of a guide for residents for the zoning bylaw would be extraordinary if you could figure out how to do it, preferably in simple layperson's language with no charts and no item number 53 at the bottom of the page where you don't understand what the top of the page means.
I have to say, I think you're asking for the impossible, because
I want the impossible.
the devil is in the details. On the zoning bylaw, you have to follow all those little,
It's true, but there's
things,
got to
and-
be a way to make it understandable to the layperson.
I don't think so. But,
One thing we could do, for example, on the website is, have threshold example, people ask the same questions over and over, and there's no reason we couldn't.
Maybe FAQ.
Exactly. There's
All
no
of
reason
those
why we-
things that you have to answer all the time.
Yep, if I'm replacing a board or a set of steps on my house, do I really need a building permit? Yes or no, maybe. Come talk to us, come talk to building, or C, go get a lawyer. I mean, we could boil it down somewhat, at least to triage people's common questions.
Well, good luck.
Yes, thank you, Betsy. Some other Collins Center recommendations that were made that we may look at, but more likely not going to take on until a new director is in place, but I just wanted to go over a couple of them. One was to closely monitor the workload impacts in the housing division, as we want to increase the inventory of our affordable units, but we know that funding for those types of things is going to decrease in the future. There was also a recommendation for the Planning Department to staff the Zoning Board of Appeals with increased budgetary resources. This would obviously be a longer discussion with the director, with Mel, and with other departments that are currently staffing that. And there was also a recommendation to include a senior level policy or planning position that would report directly to the director of planning. We have heard similar recommendations from folks as Mel's getting ready to try to hire a new director, and that it might make sense for the department to have what's being called a comprehensive plan champion, someone whose focus is to, first of all, implement the comprehensive plan that we have. Maybe think about, our current comprehensive plan goes through 2015. The last comp plan we did took 2 years to do. Maybe we don't need to do a whole new comp plan, but maybe it's time to do an update or an extension of the current plan we have and to implement all the work that was already put into it. That's all I have.
Okay, questions? Selectman Daley?
Yeah, can I ask, at the last position you were talking about, would that be an additional position?
The recommendation from the Collins Center didn't make it clear.
Because I've just got, as you referenced earlier, certainly this department is under some pressure with the reduction in Cdbg funding.
Yeah.
And so makes it tough to think about additional positions.
Yeah, and I think some changes, even if we wanted to do them, would make the most sense to do over time. Over the next 5 years, we probably will see some staff turnover, especially in housing and community development. So that might be opportunities to make those changes, like we did with our 2 new hires this current year, of getting, junior planners to go across different divisions. So.
Selectman Benka?
Yeah, I would just note that the comprehensive plan is really just a plan. And there are, if you read it literally, there are sections in there that are inconsistent with each other. If you were to implement one, you really would, it would be impossible to implement something else. And it is something of a pastiche of things put together, and goals and aspirations and a wish list. So the idea of implementing the comprehensive plan is really, I think, somewhat illusory, and I think we all realize that.
Selectman Goldstein?
Yeah, I'd agree with Selectman Banker on that, but I want to add a comment, and I hope you're not embarrassed, Kara, but I think this was a very good, comprehensive presentation of the budget and the various projects, and here's the part I hope doesn't embarrass you. I think you are born to this role, and I wish we were hearing more about that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. We're not taking any positions, just hearing about the budget, and I certainly second Selectman Goldstein's comments that it's very well presented, and also I know that you've worked to wean positions off Cdbg funding, which I think is very important as we go forward, and I really do appreciate that. I know that was not an easy exercise.
Yeah, it's juggling, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see more of it in future years as we can.
Okay. Selectman Daley?
No, I want to add also that I appreciate you stepping on to take this interim role, and you've done a good job, and thank you for that. I know it wasn't perhaps your desire to step into this position, but we appreciate your doing so.
Thank you.
Okay. You'll hear more from us, but the budget itself is something we're just, going through department by department right now.
Thank you.
Any other, okay. Then we will now move on to the topic most exciting, other post-employment benefits. Mr. Cirillo.
Good evening. I appreciate.
And I do not wish to diminish the importance of this. It's just less exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Some of us find it very
intriguing.
It's complicated. First of all, good evening.
What I've been waiting for all night.
I can imagine. I appear before you tonight wearing a different hat, of course, as chairman of the OPEB Trust Committee. Later on in the agenda, I'll be changing hats again as a member of the Brookline Pension Board. But first on to OPEBs. The OPEB liability is an issue that crosses all government units. There are more than 40,000 government units out there, states, counties, cities, towns, state agencies, and all of them have an OPEB issue. And I think it would be impossible to determine the exact amount of the unfunded liability for all government units in the United States, but it's fair to say that it's a very, very large number.
So if we totaled it all up, we would probably exceed our current national debt, right?
No, not quite. Close.
We would
but
add to the current national
we would
debt.
Possibly. So it's impossible to discuss what the unfunded liability is of all of these organizations, but we monitor and we track the unfunded liability of the town of Brookline. Of course, we have the biennial actuary that determines it, and as we have that report coming in every other year, we're able to adjust funding plans and policies and whatever, and make progress in this. So the two things I would come up to begin the conversation with is that the town has an unfunded liability, a large one. It should take many years to reach full funding, but at the same time, we have made huge progress in the last 4 years. I don't use that word lightly. As I passed on to you in my report, we started this issue with an unfunded liability of $353 million. And as of, unless the market changes direction in the last 3 months of the year, we should end fiscal year 13 with an unfunded liability of approximately $185 million. So we've nearly cut it in half. Some of that is the magic of changing the organization structure, that's adopting Gatsby 43, turning the town's assets over to the independent fund board, and the other, of course, the major one was entering the GIC, and one that I am particularly proud of, and particularly proud of you in the town, is this ongoing and accelerated funding schedule. It's almost unique to the other cities and towns in Massachusetts, at least. Most of them are catch as catch can. I have a little extra money at the end of the year, free cash, here's $5,000, here's $10,000, and they're building it like that.
Or nothing at all.
Or nothing at all. Wellesley did something completely different. They raised taxes. It was like a debt exclusion override for 10 years, $2.5 million a year. So they're going to put $25 million into their fund. But at the end of that time, they call that seed money, of course. And they're hoping that the investment return on the $25 million over 10 years will get them to where they want to go. But there's always going to be a liability, just like there will always be an annual normal cost for retirement. There will always be an annual normal cost for retiree health. And so they haven't taken that into consideration when they deal with that. Ours is unique in that we're building the fund. It's rising far faster than we anticipated, and again, I thank the Board of Selectmen for their consideration of that, because it really is being extremely helpful. And so we have, in the last 4 years, essentially reduced our unfunded liability by a great deal, 40%-ish approximately. And now on the near-term horizon, there is a piece of legislation submitted by the governor. It's retiree health reform, and if it were to pass in the current language, and we don't know, we'll know by June or July, but if it were to be passed in the current language, essentially over the next 30 years, it could save somewhere between 35 and 50% more on the unfunded liability. So suddenly, over the horizon, you could see. I don't want to say that this is going to go away, but you're going to see a diminishment of the unfunded liability from the $353 million mark to somewhere under $100 million. And that's, say, over 5 years. That savings on this legislation would appear gradually over the next 30 years. So in the next actuary, which will occur in 2014, we'll receive it by September, October-ish of 2014. You'll see something in the vicinity of a 10 or 12% reduction of the unfunded liability if that legislation were to pass. So there are things on the horizon that lead me to believe that we are in a very, very good place in this issue. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Selectman Baker.
Yeah, actually, two questions. Do all municipalities and governmental units now have to comply with GASB 43 and 45 in terms of doing this sort of evaluation?
Interesting question. They have to comply with GASB 45, which means that they have to have evaluation. GASB 43 just basically says that if you choose to give your assets away to an independent board, thereby protecting the assets against a lawsuit, someone is suing the town, then you're able to anticipate a rate of return at a higher level than normally you would. And most government units in Massachusetts are now getting that, and they're converting. But there are still some who have not adopted GASB 43 yet.
Okay. I'm actually curious about the statement that we don't know what the liability is out there, and maybe...
The national liability, yeah.
So,
I know what our liability is.
No, I understand. Yeah. But don't municipalities and governmental units across the country have to comply with, shouldn't everybody have this now? Or
they should have an actuary analysis,
yeah.
And I'm sure there's some statistical network out there that compiles all 40,000 of them and calculates what the total is, but I don't have it in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it is a national standard.
Yeah. But I will
It's a
say
standard to have the actuary.
Yes.
Yeah.
what we learned on the OPEB committee was that even when you have an actuarial analysis, every 2 years when they redo it, it changes based on different factors. So to say this is really the liability, it's not exactly right. What it is
The liability at a moment in time.
and we have a standard method of looking at this liability through these actuarial practices.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a slippery fish a little bit.
Well, yeah, but to add to that, and I appreciate the segue there, we have, again, the OPEB Trust Committee has made some changes, really basically following the path of the pension board and lowering their rate of return. And finally, as I said in the school-town partnership meeting, we've gotten rid of calendar year 2008, that rock that was hanging around our necks, that, you spread the liability of the gains or losses over a period of 5 years. And we're now into a new 5-year segment that doesn't have an 8% per year loss in it. And we've had a very, very good year, fiscal year, as far as investments. Things are looking
so far.
So far, one of the unique differences between the OPEB committee, the OPEB liability, and the pension liability is the pension does it by calendar year, and OPEB does it by fiscal year. So we're monitoring two different maps here, but both had a very, very good calendar year 12, and both are enjoying an extremely good calendar year 13 to date. I think the market is up by 10% for the first 2.5 months.
Selectman Goldstein?
Yeah, you segued right into my question, which is
We planned it.
what kind of rate of return are we experiencing? And the flip side, how much risk are we exposed to?
That's always the key. We are I will just measure what we've did in the last year. We got an approximately a 12+% rate of return for the OPEBs in the last year, and we are again experiencing a very good year this year. Now, the risk, that's an interesting question. We follow the methodology that the pension board has outlined. And the reason for that is 5 of the 7 members of the OPEB committee are members of the pension board as well, as that's how it was organized. And we adopted or selected a fund of fund managers, New England Pension Consultants. We changed our manager because what we wanted to do was lower the risk in the portfolio. Now, lowering the risk means lowering the return as well. We understood that. At the same time, there is constant pressure to get the rate of return so that we at least hit our actuarial target, which is now 7.75%. And so there's now another grand discussion going on on the pension side, which will ripple onto the OPEB side, and that is there a possibility of taking our funds and turning them over to PRIM, which is the state investment vehicle for their pensions. They have higher risk. They're in a lot of hedge funds, but they have a much better rate of return on an up market. They have a slightly worse rate of return on a down market, and we have been previously always trying to protect against the worst case scenario. But at least there's a debate going on amongst the members of the pension board to discuss whether that's an opportunity. We just went out for an RFP to ask for different options in fund management, and we're going to be exploring this over the next, I would say, 4 or 5 months, and then we'll know better then.
Selectman Daley, you want?
Yeah. I just had a question about, on the Siegel report on page 2 of section 1, and you mention in your cover letter that the unfunded actuarially accrued liability as of June 30th, 2012 is 189 million.
Yep.
And, but on your chart that you attached to your memo, you've got it at January 31st, 2013.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. What that is that this is a report as of a specific date.
Right.
And the chart at the back is includes all of the earnings to date through January 31st of 2013. I'll add one more to it. I now have the February.
The unfunded liability
So this is June
increased.
30th, 2012, though, in the
Exactly.
Siegel report.
Right.
Exactly.
But I was just surprised in 6 months or 7 months that the unfunded liability had increased.
The unfunded liability, I have to think about that one a second. The unfunded, you're referring to the chart here?
Yeah. On column 21,
Oh, wait a minute, you're,
131st,
oh, that's,
31st,
it's increased.
2013, to 201 million from 189.
No, that's the actuary, the liability always increases. What we're measuring is the unfunded portion of the liability.
Okay.
And so you'll always see across the top line there, if you will, accrued liability. You're going to see that grow. The real cost.
Right, no, but the bottom of that first section is 201 million,
Right.
unfunded actuarial accrued liability.
Yeah, and
On this page, in the Siegel report, 7 months earlier,
yeah,
the
that's where
unfunded actuarially accrued liability was 189 million.
Right.
So it's gone up 11 million in 7 months. The unfunded liability increased
the liability increases by 11 million.
in
That's all I
7
can.
months.
No, just take the January 31st out of the equation there. I just put the date of January 31st in to monitor where the numbers below that black bar that's going across, where we stand as far as rate of return through January 31st of 13. And so you'll see that our investments in the market, we've made approximately $1.147 million in 7 months in earnings here. The target for the entire fiscal year was 1.1, so we're already above our target with 7 months gone by.
So put it under the mattress now, right?
Well, we have discussed that, but it's imprudent to do so. And I will also say that February, we gained another $27,000, and in March, I'm really looking for a very good rate of return in March. But we have discussed the possibility of getting more into cash just because we're paranoid.
Okay, well, you and I may have to sit down some point.
Well,
and-
it sounds like you're at a level of detail that you may want
Right,
to
yes. But I
spend.
do want to say one other thing. You mentioned some outstanding issues at the back of your memo. And on number 3, when the pension fund reaches full funding in 2030, it was a recommendation of the OPEB
Absolutely.
committee, and I strongly, strongly advocate that the funding that's going into the pension fund then be directed to the OPEB fund.
You're absolutely right.
Because as anyone can see as they look through the charts, until we reach the arc, our liability continues to grow.
Yep.
And the only way we're going to really make progress on it is by
Yep.
redirecting this money at the time.
It's
we
a
fully
recommendation,
fund.
actually, of the OPEB committee and the town's fiscal policy committee, and I believe the Board of Selectmen have mentioned it as well. The audit committee has recommended. So I feel that it's always important to put this issue before you, always keeping it fresh in everybody's mind, because it's impossible to lock the government into some future action. You could say it's a policy, but it's always good to remind people.
Right, no, but I want to
Speaking-
strongly agree with Steve on
Okay,
that.
speaking of future government actions or government actions, when you think about this, I'm really sort of saying we had a very favorable result from our participation in the GIC. If there were to be the fully implemented healthcare program that is just beginning now, would that also have a favorable effect or impact on our healthcare liabilities?
Are you referring to the Affordable Care Act, or are
Yeah,
you?
Affordable Care
I-
Act, and/or any other things that could develop as...
In my opinion, yes, but
right.
I'm an advocate of the affordable.
Well,
health
let's
care.
just say it's beginning to happen, and it's too soon yet to talk about its impact, but it would seem to me that if we benefited from joining the GIC,
Yep.
and the Affordable Care Act also either improves the outcomes or changes the and here I'm having a hard time coming up with the right language, but I think what I'm trying to talk about is the probabilities
Yep.
within the health insurance business. We would be benefiting in some way.
I believe so, and let me translate that back to how the actuary works. The actuary is a set of assumptions, and the assumptions change every 2 years. And the assumption in the current report assumes a rate of inflation on health, our percentage
Right.
increases in GIC, essentially.
Sure.
Somewhere starting at 8% and sliding down. Well, as we just saw recently in an email that was circulated, I think this year's number is about 3.5%.
Right.
That it was not in this actuary, but it's going to ripple into the next
It will be in the
actuary.
next one.
And that, in addition to this legislation on reform, I'm expecting positive numbers for that next actuary in, again, September,
Okay,
October
so
14th.
in addition to putting more money aside in our annual contributions and/or our other, let's say, prudent steps, changes in the healthcare environment in
Yes.
addition will have an effect
Absolutely.
on this liability over time.
A positive or negative effect.
Could be either way,
Yeah,
right,
but, let's,
Yeah,
what
I
I think
understand.
doesn't necessarily mean what's going to happen, but I do think it's going to be a positive effect.
Okay, any other final comments on OPEBs?
I have a sort of a mathematical question.
Uh-oh.
On section 1, page 1 of the OPEB report,
Of the OPEB report. Okay. You're talking,
it's the
Yeah, the
executive
Siegel-
summary for the
Siegel
town,
report.
of
Yeah.
the Siegel report.
oh, the
Yes.
Siegel report.
Yeah.
I don't have, oh, yes, I do have it, I just wanted to say, yes, okay.
That uses, it's the bottom of the first column going up to the top of the second column.
On page 1, section 1?
Page 1, section 1, the paragraph that begins, if the benefits are partially funded.
Yeah.
And it indicates that there's a 7.25% discount
A
rate.
blended rate, yes.
Blended rate, partially funded, blended
Yep.
discount rate that was used under the prior valuation and under this valuation. And it's made up of previously 8.15% fully funded, 5.5% pay-as-you-go. which dropped to 7.75% and 4.5%. Both of the factors dropped, and yet you ended up at the same blended
Yeah,
discount rate?
we've discussed that with our actuary, Kathy Riley from Siegel. And some of there are offsetting actions that are going into that, where we have a higher amount, higher level of funding.
Yeah.
And we're that much closer to the ARC, the annual contribution. When they did it 2 years ago, we had annual funding of about, well, forgetting about the one-time free cash of $1 million, I think we had one-time funding of $500,000 or something like that. And now, taking out the $500 of free cash this year, we're over $3 million. And so there's...
So it's a function of the fully funded portion becoming
Less.
relatively greater.
The other interesting thing is, of course, is that you're dropping the gap between the 5.5 and originally the 8.15. And so when you lower the rate of return estimate down to 7.75, that also has a strange effect on these numbers in that you're not getting as much of a benefit in the out years because there's not anything to make up when you finally hit the ARC. I mean, our goal hopefully will be to lower our rate of return down to a lower number, 7.5 possibly, if the rate of return is good on the next time. And that, of course, would mean that you're very close between the two numbers. When it gets to full, you hit the full ARC, you won't really see a lot of benefit from that.
Okay. Well, as I said, this is a complex subject that requires close attention to figures, and we appreciate your understanding and presentation to us in ways that at least we're trying to understand to the best of our ability. Moving on to the Retirement Board.
All right, I'm just going to now, as a member of the Pension Board.
Pension Board.
First of all, apologize, our chairman had trouble with transportation today, and he never did get in from Tennessee.
Oh.
And we were expecting him, and he was expected to come tonight. I just would like to make a general comment. I want to introduce Frank Zecker, who's the director of the Pension Board, and he's also the director of the OPEB Trust Board.
Why are we calling it Retirement Board?
I call it the Pension Board's a retirement board.
Okay, I just
interchangeable.
want to be clear.
Yeah.
There's no change of name.
No, there's no
Okay,
change in
all
name.
right, that's okay.
And Frank helped Chet, Chairman Riley,
Right.
prepare his comments, and he will fill in for Chairman Riley, and I'll be glad to answer any questions
Okay.
about what the board policies are or beliefs are.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Zecca,
How are you?
welcome.
Just kind of some boilerplate highlights of 2012 calendar year. We report to the state on a calendar year basis that our calendar year rate of return was 11.7%. Our 27-year annual rate of return is 8.7, might be a touch over that. Our current actuarial rate of return is 7.75%, which has been lowered from the old actuarial rate of 8.15. We're currently 55.8% funded. As of 1/1/12, the total assets as of 12/31/12 are $222,500,000. Currently have approximately 860 retirees. That fluctuates a little bit from month to month from retirees to deaths. And our total active membership, excluding the teachers, we don't have teachers in our system, as you know, is approximately 1,383 members. Some highlights and some progress that's moving forward, as Steve talked about, is we currently have an RFP out for a fund-to-fund manager strategy. People have looked at the PRIT fund. The PRIT fund returned 13.8% for calendar year 2012.
And how did they do in 2008?
They had a greater loss than we did.
Just trying to have perspective,
Yep,
that's all.
and that's a good way of looking at it. And our 27-year rate of return is 8.7. I haven't seen the published rate for the state PRIT fund is probably right around 9.1%. So I think as Steve has said that we don't hit home runs, but we don't strike out, so we're at doubles, if we use a baseball analogy, so.
And in 2008, thrown out stealing.
Thrown out stealing, very good. But we had 11 or 12 respondents to our RFP. Based on the new state regulations, the reason why we're looking at this is they've really put more and more requirements on board members from reporting all their personal assets, requiring education of 18 hours over a 3-year period, a minimum of 3 each year, and also the ability when you do an RFP, it takes the fastest you can, once you advertise it, it becomes almost a 6-month process. And anyone in the investment world, what you want to invest in today, 6 months from now might not be the same thought process. So we lose, as they say, a lot of alpha, positive return, because a good idea today might not be the best of ideas 6 months, or else it's reached its peak. So the board has looked at the ability of ways that they can invest at a more reasonable rate. Fund-of-fund managers can do that. The PRIT fund doesn't have the same regulations that we follow, and fund-of-fund managers, there's 2 systems in the Commonwealth have adopted this strategy that don't use the PRIT fund, but they were chosen before this new Chapter 176, which was a whole new set of rules and laws that retirement boards have to follow. So it is going to be a 4 or 5 month process as we vet through as to whether to join the PRIT fund or pick a fund-of-fund manager's strategy that can invest a little bit more timely. The 2 systems that chose not to be in the PRIT fund but used the fund-of-fund manager strategy has outperformed the PRIT fund. So they were able to be a little bit more timely, and it's something that the board is looking at. Attached to the quick highlight sheet is just, this is the PRIT, PERAC's 2011 profile. The 2012 profile will be out probably the end of May. The current asset allocation of the retirement system, that's where our investments are allocated, and behind that is where all the monies are invested as of 12/31/12. Across the top bar, you'll see the total composite. In the 1 year, we're 11.7% as was reported, and below where we invest and where the indices are. And then also at the back, and I don't want to bore you with some highlighted different segments from the actuarial valuation that highlights any significant changes. In one of them, the most important is lowering of the actuarial assumption from 8.15 to 7.75. Hopefully, we can keep maintaining our rate of return, because the better the retirement board does, will help us on that 2030 funding processes. So I've provided, and I think you've been provided, and I sent it to Patty Parks today, the complete valuation, which you might have had, but we have it in a PDF that it's, I think, 50 pages long, and not to give you, there's a lot of nice little charts and a lot of definitions, and I didn't want to kind of burden you with paper. So the retirement system is on a 2030 funding schedule. We just rolled out a member portal, trying to go more on the paperless, where members that belong to the retirement system can log on to see how much they have in there, what they would get if they retired on particular dates. We're looking to do a retiree rollout sometime over the summer. That will help us save in postage. The state retirement system has 50,000 retirees. They do not send out monthly statements as we do. So the board is looking at, if we do this retiree rollout, as we accumulate all the emails for the retirees, that they'll have a log-on portal, which will save a few dollars in the long run.
I do believe that we have the,
That might be the OPEB that you're looking at?
no. Town of Brookline Contributory Retirement System,
Oh, okay.
January 2012.
January 1, 2012? Is that the
Yeah,
most recent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So,
All right, do we have questions for Mr. Zecca? Yes, Selectman Benka.
Yeah, Frank, can you explain, there's the options if we get away from a Town of Brookline fund, which is what you're looking at now? It's basically turning the investments over to
It still would be a Brookline retirement system.
managed by,
Managed by the PRIT fund.
or by, you said a fund of funds?
I'll give an example. There's a particular community that uses a fund of funds strategy, whether it be American funds where they would, the various asset classes are done by funds. There might be 17 underlining managers in a U.S. small cap fund, as opposed to us just picking a manager. So it's more of a fund of funds, a mutual fund type strategy, I guess, would be it.
I'm just curious, are there options that the state allows retirement funds, retirement plans like Brookline's? Do they define what we can do?
Yes.
And the options are what?
There's probably 30 or 40 pages of regulations, but
Okay.
they're limited into, let's say, hedge funds, which can be very risky. Depending on your asset size, you can only invest a certain amount if you meet that asset size. So if you're a small system, the only way you can invest in hedge funds is through the state investment fund. So they limit as to the type of investment in how much you can invest in it from a allocation perspective.
If we don't essentially turn management over to the state, do we, I'm curious, I gather that one reason for doing that would be that there are now financial disclosures required of the retirement board members.
There still would be,
There still would be.
yes, because they're fiduciaries of the retirement system.
Okay, so what,
The reason for turning it over, one would, that we've looked at is custodial fees.
Okay.
State Street gave us an increase, so the custodial fees would be a lot less and almost at zero, depending on, if we went to the PRIT fund, there would be no management fees. I mean, custodial fees. The management fees, right now, we're at between about 90 basis points. These fund-to-fund managers are around 52 to 55 basis points, so there'd be a management fee savings and a fund-to-fund strategy as opposed to an active managed strategy is a little bit, I should say, a lot less bookkeeping for, or accounting work for
Okay.
me, but I wouldn't want to have them go that route just to save me some time and effort.
okay.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, over time, the fees associated, though, with mutual funds are significant. And I'm be surprised if, when you count in those fees, if that works out to be a good way to go, but.
I think that's been looked at, and I think for the size of our fund, what we pay on basis points, it's a lot less than active management. Some active managers, depending on the asset class, could be 150, 180 basis points, as opposed to the fund-to-fund strategy, which is right around 52 to 55 basis points.
If I could, the retirement board has not, as of yet, looked at the 11 bids. We're going to be seeing them for the first time, starting Thursday morning at 8:15, and we'll be starting our due diligence then, so we'll explore that issue for you.
Okay, well, but my other point I wanted to make, did I see, or did you tell us that over 27 years, Prim's rate of return is slightly higher than ours?
Yes.
So even with their higher risk and the downside years, they have done better over the long haul?
Well,
And they have, and I can tell you, in the early years, the retirement board, when it was a 3-member board,
Yeah,
the retirement system was extremely conservative, heavy into bonds early in the years and missed,
oh, I see, so
Oh.
we had some years where we were
yes, in the.
weighing us down
in
on
the
that
90s,
scale, on the comparison.
Before they
Yeah.
decided to look at mirror the type of allocations that other boards have. We were heavy into bonds early on.
Okay, and when you were saying that they have, recently, in the last year or two, did you say you'd gone to a more conservative manager?
Almost 4 years ago, we switched from Makita Investments to New England Pension Consultants.
To lower risk?
No, we've changed our asset allocation strategy over the last couple of years to lower risk.
While Prim did not try to lower their risk, or did they?
They've changed, but they're more riskier than us, but not way out there. I mean, they use a risk ratio analysis, and I'm talking a little bit out of school, but we might be at, say, 4.5, and they're at 5, so it's not off the radar chart. They tell you that if you take more risk, you tend to get greater return or sometimes lose more.
Because I think that I mean, obviously, they seem to have a pretty good record over the long haul, but the downside is, I think a very large fund like that is less able to respond to immediate conditions.
And there's some change on that board coming. I mean, but the treasurer and governor have seats on that board, and we read the papers, there might be some change there, so where that ends up, I couldn't, tell you. So that's something the board's looking at, how stable that will be based on the upcoming year or so and what the RFPs.
Well, what I'm just suggesting is if you go to back to a slightly more aggressive manager, you might get the rate of return that they do and still have a little more nimbleness in responding to the market.
Based on my luck of investing, if I did that tomorrow, the market would go down and we'd lose more, so I'm not a voting member, thank God. So.
Okay.
All right. We're actually just getting updates, and we don't need any actions, so unless there are other questions from members of the board, I thank you, Mr. Zecca, and I thank both of you for your help and helping us understand these very complicated, and I know to some people, less exciting subjects, but critically important, and we do appreciate.
And the one thing Chairman Riley wanted me to say is that he always looks forward to cooperating and working with the town and coming up with, he is feisty, but he fights hard for the retirees.
Sure, we understand that.
And
I would say both you and Mr. Cirillo have had very good information to give us tonight, and we are very grateful to both of you for being on the case, so to speak, and understanding and making sure that we understand what we need to know. So we appreciate that, and I'm sorry Chet can't be with us, and I hope he arrives from wherever he is.
He's got a couple of meetings tomorrow and Thursday with the town. So
okay, well, I know the weather's been difficult for a number of people.
But please convey to Mr. Riley our appreciation for the good job the retirement board's been doing, and the return obviously is good, and we're happy to see it.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you both. Next item is taxi medallions. We're going to have a public hearing, and I do believe that Mr. LaCapra, who we thought might have gotten stuck somewhere between here and wherever he was coming from, is actually succeeded in arriving, which is nice. So welcome. And I'm going to turn this over to Selectman Goldstein, who is our representative to the Taxi Medallion working group and discussion. And yes, I see there are a few members of the public present, so take your time, come in and have a seat, please. All right, Selectman Goldstein, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairwoman DeWitt. Ken Goldstein, as you know, I've been working with the Taxi Cab Medallion Working Group for the last 3.5 years. As you may also know, that the town in general has been working on the subject of taxi cab medallions for almost 8 years now, and 2 home rule petitions and many, many meetings later. We are ready to complete this phase of the process and ready to move on with a a proposal. And this is a public hearing to discuss that proposal openly and get some input on it. The proposal in general is to allow our taxi cab owners who currently operate under a license the ability to own their interest in the license. That would be called a medallion instead of a taxi cab license. And importantly, that would give them the ability to seek bank financing for their investment and capitalize their industry, and to become investors in a business which will, in theory, appreciate over time, much the way people buy and sell other businesses in town. Compare it to maybe a pizza shop or a convenience store or any other business in which you can invest in and gain appreciation and income from. There's no secret in this that the plan as proposed will result in significant revenues to the town as well. At our last Board of Selectmen discussion about this proposal, we asked the Transportation Board to evaluate and to recommend on the plan, and we also asked the working group to fine-tune the plan to make a final recommendation on the different tiers of medallion distribution and the pricing that would be applicable at those tiers. So to review, our consultant, Richard LeCapra, who's here, raise your hand, Richard, has proposed a three-tiered system, and that's, you'll see that outlined in graphic form on the second page of the handout that you have. We would take our current 185 taxi licenses, and the industry would give us back 32 licenses. I'll explain what that means in just a minute. Of the remaining licenses, that's 153 licenses, that would be, those remaining licenses would be divided into three tiers. The first tier would be offered back to the licensees at a more or less a token rate. They would pay a $1,000 administrative fee, but the fee for the actual medallion would be low compared to what the anticipated fair market value is. There would be a fee that is paid to the town upon the resale of that Tier 1 medallion, but there's no guarantee that that would ever be resold. So there's not necessarily any other fee associated with those Tier 1 medallions. Another quantity of those licenses of those medallions would be sold to the licensees at a higher fee, more than the $1,000 or so administrative fee, and more than the fee that would be paid upon resale of the medallion, and that would be at a fixed higher fee. That's called our Tier 2. Finally, the last quantity of medallions would be auctioned to establish a market price, and after that auction price is established, the remaining medallions would be sold at that auction price, and those would be known as our Tier 3 medallions. So building on this, the working group has worked with the industry representatives and with our consultant to arrive at a tier system which we believe will work. That's involved some compromise by the town, and and I'm pleased to say that many of our industry representatives have expressed at least their initial approval and willingness to meet us on that compromise. The key components of that compromise are the following. So the give back, the number of licenses which would be withheld and which would eventually end up in that Tier 3 group of medallions, has been reduced from 37 to 32 medallions. So fewer medallions sold at Tier 3 auction means fewer sold at the highest price to the town, but it also, on the flip side of that, means a greater number of medallions that the industry can acquire at a lower price, capitalize the industry in that manner. The Tier 1 number of medallions has been increased from 37 to 46, and again, these are the medallions that the industry acquires for just a nominal fee, $1,000 initial administrative fee, and then there would be a $40,000 fee payable upon transfer or resale of those medallions, except in the case of handicapped accessible vehicles, which there is a discount on. That would be $30,000 for a handicapped accessible vehicle. The Tier 2 medallions, we've increased to 69 from the previous number, and significantly the price of those 69 Tier 2 medallions has been lowered from $70,000 to $65,000. Again, this is a way of making this program affordable to the industry, and requires some minor concessions, some concessions on the town's part that will affect our eventual revenues from this. An additional part of the Tier 2 medallions is that they instead of the $65,000 being paid immediately upon distribution of them, the compromise is now that those will be paid in a 3-year period, at any time during a 3-year period, unless the medallion is sold in the meantime, at which point the compensation would be payable to the town. These changes, as I said, will obviously eliminate some of the risks involved in this to the industry, but we've done some due diligence, we, the working group, have done some due diligence to assure ourselves that what is being proposed will not be an undue risk for the industry, and that there is a reasonable probability that this is going to be a viable business model. Specifically, Brookline Bank has been consulted and has assured us that at these prices and at these numbers, the medallions are a commercially viable enterprise, and that they will be part of the market to finance these items. Mr. LaCapra, also, who's here and can speak for himself, will also tell you that he agrees with this analysis. The expected return for the town is approximately $15 million, but that will be paid, that will be monies that are recouped over a fairly long period of time. And of course, there's risks to the town too that doesn't happen if the program is not successful. I want to address a couple of points very quickly. The suggestion has been made that somehow moving to a medallion system will end up making an end to the regulation of taxi cabs by the town. This is not an end to the town of Brookline regulating its taxi cabs. Instead, we will be capitalizing the taxi industry and taxi businesses so that they will be able to respond in a reasonable way to new regulations. And most significantly will probably be a requirement for new and improved vehicles, better than the fleet that's currently on the road. I've also heard a suggestion recently that taxi cabs are somewhat of an obsolete industry, and that's based on new car for hire services that some of you might have seen. There's one called Uber, for example, that offers an internet service where you can reserve a car for hire. Some people think that that's the trend. I would point out that Uber offers taxi cab locators as part of their service, and that taxi cabs will always, according to Mr. LaCapra and according to everybody that we've talked to, and particularly according to the banks who are interested in financing this, taxi cabs will always be part of the model for car transportation. That's because the difference between a car for hire and a taxi cab is that a taxi cab can be hailed. You can stand on the street and wave one down. You cannot do the same thing with a car for hire. Also, charging by the distance. We're all familiar with the taxi cab meters, and that's something that only a licensed taxi cab can do, and that's something that a medallion taxi cab can do. And further, all of the regulations that the town puts in place for its taxi cabs are also an advantage in the marketplace. Specifically, our drivers are licensed and overseen by the town and by the Transportation Board, and that's also an advantage that the consuming public sees with taxi cabs that is not available for cars for hire. So I don't think that the services such as Uber are a threat to the system that we're proposing here. I want to thank the working group who has, true to their name, worked very hard on this, and Michael Sandman from the Transportation Board, Fred Levitan, former member of the Transportation Board, Bobby Allen, former selectman, Mr. Kleckner, of course, who's guided us with his usual deftness, Captain Grotman, Chief O'Leary from the Police Department, Patty Correa from Town Council Office, Dave Giannakakis from our Procurement Department. But at the helm of this effort has been our Transportation Director, Todd Corain, who's right here in the front row, who's done a wonderful job, and who I now call to the podium. Thank you.
Todd Crane, Transportation Administrator for the Town of Brookline. I just want to briefly, last time we were before you on this item was actually a year ago tomorrow. Many of us did not realize it had taken that long to get to this point. But in true Brookline fashion, it was a very public process. And I just want to briefly go over what we've been doing since we were last here. One of the requests by the Board of Selectmen was that the working group go back and discuss this issue with the Transportation Board, that the Transportation Board hold a public hearing with the industry as well as any other interested members, and that they actually take a vote and provide you with an opinion on this item. In April of last year, they held their public hearing, actually right in this room. It was about 2.5 hours long. We heard from members of our current industry. We heard from members of the Boston industry, our drivers, Boston drivers, people who wanted access to our industry on the phasing of the plan, on their opinions of the tiered system. We heard from some people in the taxi financing sectors give their opinion as well. And in September of last year, the Transportation Board came back in one of their public meetings, again took public comment on the Phase 1 plan as presented by Mr. LaCapra, and they took a vote to recommend that the Board of Selectmen move favorable action on the Phase 1 plan, provided that, and instruct staff to implement the taxi medallion conversion, provided that the taxi medallion working group meet with the industry before coming to the Board of Selectmen and try to come up with some changes within the tier system that might be more palatable to the industry moving forward. That vote was a 5-to-1 vote with Christopher Dempsey voting opposed. And I believe he is here tonight and will explain his reasons why, and I believe he did provide you with a letter as well. After that, that was conveyed to the Taxi Medallion Working Group. We've met twice with the 4 largest owners, which represent over 160 of the 185 licenses that were most affected by the percentages within the tiered system. Now, they are also the 4 that hold the largest dispatch systems as well. And through their request, they had submitted some various proposals, alternatives to Mr. LaCapra's. Generally sticking with the tiered system, we communicated, and the Transportation Board communicated with them that the tiered system really is a must in order to capitalize the industry successfully and move through this process. And they had provided their alternatives within the tiered system. And another thing they asked us to do was they argued that, in fact, there were changes within the market that was affecting their financial statements that were not as favorable as when Mr. LaCapra started this process. And they asked us to look at their current financials, pass them on to Mr. LaCapra, and receive his opinion on whether we should continue moving forward with this process or not. Mr. LaCapra came back and said that he reviewed the financials. He saw there was no reason not to move forward. However, he did recommend that if we could find common ground and come up with terms within the working with the industry that was more palatable, that sort of met them halfway between our plan and their plan within how the tiered system was divided, that we do that in order to move the process forward. And that's exactly what the working group has done with the final tiered proposal, which is in your handout, that Selectman Goldstein just went through. And essentially, what you see there is how the town will divide up the tiered systems and make those existing medallions available to the current owners, which was part of the town meeting vote, was consistency within the industry, that we involve the current owners. as well as how the give back percentages will be used to determine the pricing in Tier 3. All of that will happen during Phase 2 upon your vote, I believe not tonight, after this public hearing at a later meeting, if you so choose to move this forward. I do want to bring up right now Mr. LaCapra, our consultant, to discuss the financeability, any changes in the market that he's seen, just to go over that briefly with you.
Just ask Todd a question before he goes.
Wait, Selectman Daley?
Yeah, one question. This memorandum we have from you is the proposal of the working group, right?
Correct, yes.
And were we supposed to get, as you just said, a recommendation from the Transportation Board? Do we have that?
The Transportation Board just took a vote. They said that they were not, that they endorsed the Phase 1 plan, and they endorsed the tiered system, and they were leaving it up to the Board of Selectmen and the Tax and Medallion Working Group to develop whatever the tier systems look like. But they endorsed the tiered system moving forward, but they believe since the tiered system essentially dealt with the financials, the money, that was more in your corner than in theirs, which is more the regulatory side, according to how we divided the duties within our enabling legislation.
Mr. LaCapra?
Thank you. Good evening. Richard LaCapra. I've been an advisor to the, I'm not sure, Transportation Board or Working Group or
some of each.
The town. The first thing I'd like to say is I think the compromise that was reached was very, very good, because essentially what we did is we took the input from a much broader segment, and no matter how much a system comes together, getting the input from various stakeholders, I believe, always improves it, and I think it did in this case. The recommendation that I made that Mr. Corain referred to was that after reviewing the financials, there were a couple of important things that the owners had said that I felt should be pursued. Among these, and what I think is the single most important one, was originally we had the Tier 2 option being selected and paid for at the moment of selection. This plan gives a 3-year window for the industry to go through essentially the transition process to stabilize, to do the types of consolidation with sufficient time to make that next transition. So I would strongly recommend that, and I think it was a very marked improvement to the plan. Now, overall, we are looking at the medallions as a saleable, tradable commodity, and very much like a franchise or a government lease, it's essentially passing on a public conveyance for a price, such that the public is compensated for the conveyance they transmit. The question came about very early whether it's financeable. From my investigations, the types of lenders, the type of prices, and the stability of the current cab industry, I found no obstacle to the financeability, certainly at these levels. We had the important discussions with the Brookline Savings Bank, which I was part of via phone, where they reviewed the numbers and not only said it was feasible, but wanted to be part of the lenders who would be involved when the transitions were going on. So I think we have a broad section of the lending community who is looking at this as a viable plan and are interested in getting involved from their side, which is basically that of the lender. So I think at this point, after reviewing the financial statements of the industries, they do have the same problems that are raised in the report. They're undercapitalized, and they really do not have a lot of room to maneuver should we want to introduce new products and services. And until the industry changes fundamentally with the ability to finance and expand and grow from capital, we are not going to be able to implement these improvements. So this plan gets us on the road to capitalizing the industry, and in that sense, we can look at this transition as a way to basically enhance the industry, stabilize the industry, get the balance sheet of the tab companies in good order, and then move to a better industry.
Okay, do we have questions before we move on? Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I do have one question. On those tier 2 ones where they don't have to pay for them right away, if somebody uses it for a couple of years and then goes out of business, we're out of luck, but I assume that the documents will specify that the medallion comes back to the town.
Yes,
at that point.
I'm sorry. Yes, there's at this point a lot of rulemaking to be written, and these are the kinds of things that we would resolve in this. But there is a set of Phase 2 regulations that we would be looking at, and essentially, if the owner does not elect or goes out of business, it does revert back to the town. So the town does not have that sale. Similarly, an owner could not exercise an option on one of the tiers, in which case it goes back to the town. They may be in business and feel that they're just fine with the number they have and not elect any more. So they can pass on the option, which would have the same effect of increasing the town's inventory of medallions.
I have a question for Mr. LaCapra. Do we have any information, recent information, and it could also be to Mr. Corain, about transactions in communities nearby where medallions exist? For example, I'm curious to know whether the volume of trade, sales, or whatever you want to call them, has been constant, gone up, gone down, and the value of the medallions in a sale.
From my vantage point, the volumes have been fairly consistent for years, and medallions have typically gone up. I'm not sure of the last price in Cambridge, but are you aware of that? Well, Boston has gone up excessively. There are certain advantages to the Boston medallion, but in the last 7 years, it's gone from 300 to about 650,000 per medallion. And the trades have not been impeded by the increasing prices.
Okay, well, that's part of what I wanted to know. No, thank you. All right. Any other comments, Selectman Goldstein, before we
just further to Selectman Daley's question. It should be noted that we're going to have this hearing tonight. Hopefully, this board will resolve to move forward into Phase 2 of the process. That would happen with a vote maybe in a week or two.
Right. We are not taking action tonight, just to be clear to everybody.
Right, and that's when the details, such as Selectman Daley raised, will be addressed as we document all of the various rules and regulations for this program. So, so far, Phase 1 was just to format the allocation of medallions, the tier system, and the compensation that's at the core of that.
Okay. We're prepared to take comments from the public, and I guess I'm going to ask, is there anyone here from the Transportation Board who wants to add to what has already been mentioned? If so, raise your hand. In the back, yes, Mr. Sandman, would you like to come forward?
Mike Sandman, formerly a member of the Transportation Board and the Transportation Board's representative to the work group. Actually, I don't have anything to add at this particular moment, but if something comes up that would be, that I can comment on, I'll certainly do that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. We then are open for comment. Is there anyone representing the taxi industry who wishes to speak? If so, come forward to the microphone and please first identify yourself for our recorder.
Good evening. My name is Naif Bethany, and I represent Bay State Taxi and its affiliates. And I'd like to start off by saying that before any action is taken on this issue, I think it has to be studied quite a bit further. And also I'd like to say that Bay State Taxi and its affiliates oppose the plan in its entirety. What it will do effectively is put us out of business. Now, if that's the aim of the town, to put a viable company out of business, then by all means, continue for the good of the town of Brookline so that it could line its pockets by extorting, in quotes, money from the taxi industry. And I would simply like to say also, why is it the taxi industry that is suffering this? And why isn't it other businesses in town that have licenses? Now I can give you some history. I was, along with my partner Arthur Goldberg, back in 2001, started talking about the medallionization in the town of Brookline. We started the dialogue in 2001. It's now 2013, 12 years later. The plan that Mr. LaCapra has set forth would put us out of business. Number one, we would have fewer cabs to operate, and we'd have those fewer cabs saddled with debt that it had to pay off. Now, it sounds like a pipe dream for the town to say, oh, these medallions are going to be worth X number of dollars, and therefore, all you have to do is sell off some of those medallions to pay off your debt. That's all well and good, but if you want to run a company and keep a viable company running, then you can't do that. You have to keep the numbers up. Bay State Taxi has 77 licenses. We also had 17 affiliates. That gives us 94 licenses that we run in the town. I had petitioned the Transportation Board about a year ago asking them for more licenses because the business, our business, requires more cabs to service our clients. If you take away cabs that we now have, that's going to be a problem. We're not going to be able to service our clients, plus we're going to have debt when we purchase these cabs at $65,000, $40,000, or $125,000, or whatever it is. And if you look at the financials that I submitted to the taxi working group, you'll see that debt, the company cannot carry that debt, certainly not with fewer cabs bringing in revenue. Now, let's see. I'll give you an example, our example, very briefly. Under Mr. LaCapra's plan, if we sold the 20 medallions in Tier 1 and purchased 28 medallions in Tier 2 at $65,000 each times 28 medallions, that's $1.82 million. If we wanted to purchase the medallions in Tier 3, that's another $2 million. We'd be in debt to almost $4 million, and we'd have 13 fewer cabs to run to pay that debt off. So my suggestion tonight is that this whole issue be tabled until more research is done into what impact this is going to have on the business. Not just the business of not just all of Brookline's taxi business, but on the individual companies, on our company in particular. It's going to have a devastating effect. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather the medallion process go away. I would like to just stay with the licensing system. Also, I'd like to say that there's no precedent that's ever been set where a town reaps such a profit each step of the way in a licensing process. The Brookline taxi licensees are not getting anything in this deal. They're paying for everything in Tier 1, everything in Tier 2, and everything in Tier 3. There's no grandfathering of any licenses to give them a break, to give a cushion of some sort or another. So I have a number of different, I could go on like this all night, but if you'd like, I could give you what I'm about to say in writing. I don't know if you'd appreciate that.
Sure, we
Okay.
would welcome
I will
that
do that.
in
What I
writing.
intend to give you is the correspondence that I have had, or that Bay State Taxi has had, between the Transportation Board and the Taxi Medallion Working Committee. And these go back years and years. And you'll see what the concerns are that I have, and also the alternative plans that I have to make this a viable plan. Because could not possibly think of going forward with something like this at this time. It needs to be studied. It wasn't studied by the Transportation Board. It wasn't studied by the Taxi Medallion Working Group. They said that they met with the owners of the various companies. They met twice. And on each occasion, they basically told us what they can do, whether we agreed or not. And that's not exactly working together to come up with a plan that's acceptable to the industry and to the town. But if this plan is implemented, it's going to be devastating to the industry in the town of Brookline.
Thank you, and we would appreciate whatever you want to supply in the way of written comment.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, you have your hand up?
Yes.
If you'd give it to, just leave it there for our hardworking.
I don't, I've already been embarrassed by carrying that around. I'll leave it here.
Okay. Sir, if you'd please identify yourself for the
Good
record.
evening. My name is Daria Ghazan Tafreshi. I'm the president of Brookline Town Taxi. I just want to start by saying that I'm one of the supporters of movement toward medalization and a supporter of the tier system that we have worked so hard on. And I believe the compromise that has been called the modified compromise is a compromise that could, as far as I'm concerned, could be lived with and bring the industry into the next step. For years and years, I have insisted that the taxi industry in Brookline, the way it has been set up, has been totally dysfunctional to become any success at all, basically because we would lack the regulation that we need to make a solid foundation for the taxi industry. So we have a lot of corruption going on, from driver management to quite a few other things that has never been paid attention to, simply because we were so involved in changing the system, revamp the entire system, that there wasn't a need for that type of detailed regulation that we had set forth for so long for maintenance, for example, or inspections and so forth. But there are many other issues that were involved that just hampered any effort that we did as a company to make investments and so forth, simply because we didn't have that regulation to control our drivers, our employees, and so forth. So it is totally vital that we put this medallionization into fast forward at this point, because everybody is in the limbo at the moment. My main point of stepping to the podium today was that we had been involved somewhat with the process of how to become medallionized, pricing of the medallions and so forth. But more than the pricing, you need the proper regulations and bylaws and the rules to make sure that as owners of the medallions, we have that pure definition of ownership. And there are things that we should be allowed to do without fighting in court to get that from towns, where it was allowed by other towns and jurisdiction, not by authorities, but it was cases that were taken to court and the rights that won in the court. And specifically, for example, right to lease the medallions at some point, that as owner of the medallions, we should be able to lease our medallions. That's just one aspect of the ownership that I'd like to get into tonight. But there are many other things, such as, again, being able to regulate the drivers. I've said for many, many years that if a driver of mine rips off a passenger with the elderly coupon for 50 cents, I will go get phone calls from everywhere and trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. But if a driver rips us off for thousands of dollars, there's no place I can go to make an effective move against that and to show to the next driver that they can turn around and do the same thing. So how could I go and make thousands of dollars worth of investment in equipment and in computerized when the next day my tablet is missing from my vehicle and I have nowhere to go to grieve to? I can take the guy to the small claim, but that doesn't bring my tablet back, the tablet that I dispatch my very job to these drivers. So regulations to prevent those kind of things just makes a solid foundation for the operators and the owners of the industries. But you cannot basically set regulation and say, okay, this is Medallions, this is yours, and this is what you pay for. But this is what we can do with it, and this is how much you can charge. Because simply that would not give us the pure meaning of the ownership. And in many places, the banks may have problems with type of assets that don't have this kind of assets, that don't have the proper regulations behind them. So I'm just asking the board here tonight that in writing the regulations to also get us involved and let us explain to you as what our issues have been and what type of regulations we need to basically help us out to make it industry that succeeds, that you guys get your money and we get to have a vital investment that we can continue on and pass it on to our children and so forth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah.
Let me just follow up. I am inclined to agree that the concept of going forward with this sale has to be part of a package with the regulations, and that we really need to ensure that if we go forward with the medallion system, that the value of those medallions is preserved and essentially identified. So I'd like to hear a little bit about timing with regard to the crafting of the regulations and the actual sale of medallions.
The approximate timing of the Phase 2 sale of the medallion process given to us by Mr. LaCapra was 8 months. Before we start selling the medallions, that's for legal to draw up all the papers, all the various meetings that must be had before the medallions hit the ground. Next month, April, the Transportation Board begins crafting the regulations to regulate a medallion-based industry. It's very different than our license-based regulations. It's completely different. We've been looking on the staff level at various examples for medallion regulations, and the Transportation Board is going to start that process next month. I'm going to ask actually that Chairman Safer appoint a subcommittee, a taxi medallion subcommittee, to do the regulations, and our goal is to have the regulations back and approved by July, August the latest. So before the medallions hit the ground, before anyone has to take an option on Tier 1 or Tier 2, they will know the regulations that they are going to be operating under.
Okay, good. In addition to the sorts of regulation that the individual from Town Taxi mentioned, the Selectman Goldstein mentioned Uber and other car-for-hire operations, and I know that there's been a battle in Boston and Cambridge about those, and one thing that I would think is that if we are expecting individuals to pay for taxi medallions, that we would consider explicitly banning those sorts of operations in Brookline, or regulating them so that you don't have the sorts of battles that you have in Cambridge and Boston. Any reaction to that?
I believe that we are only one of 2 municipalities already that have livery regulations where we actually license livery businesses. Up until now, it was explained that our powers to regulate them under the Transportation Board was only if the livery company was operated out of an office within Brookline. We can't regulate ones that are based out of Lexington or Revere. I can talk to town council in terms of whether we can actually regulate any that pick up in Brookline. I'm not sure. We'll look to expand that. But also just to comment on Uber, one of the things that Uber is doing in Boston that it's not doing in the other markets where it's having some trouble, and I understand the industry in Boston is still fighting them, is they are, as Selectman Goldstein said, they are now partnering with the taxi industry, certain members of the taxi industry, So on Uber, where you traditionally look, it's a smartphone app where you call up, shows you where the nearest black car is or SUV. In the Boston Uber app, there's actually a taxi cab. So for those taxi cabs that are part of the Uber app, you can actually call a taxi cab, and for the various benefits that Selectman Goldstein went through. If I was in the Brookline industry, I'd strongly recommend that they actually partner with Uber in those types of new technologies. The person who does that, they pay $1 to Uber, and then they pay the normal taxi rate of fare to the taxi company. So it's not an either or, it could be a both.
Yeah,
that our customers can take advantage of.
it's really, there's clearly a spectrum here from the taxi, the traditional taxi on one end to Boston Coach on the other, and then there are these new business models in the middle. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think these sorts of issues have to be identified as part of this whole process, because I think, you don't, to the extent that we're talking about monetizing this and expecting an investment in this, I think the nature of that investment has to be identified for the prospective purchasers.
Okay, other comments?
My name is Sai Corey. I represent Holly Inc., a small company that has 5 taxi licenses. My major concern actually is that doing the medallion system as it is suggested by Mr. DeCapris, what it will do, it will take lots of taxis or lots of licenses from the major companies, and then they would not be able to recoup that from their fees. And then they will charge us independent small businesses a tremendous amount of fees to make up for their losses from sending their.
Excuse me, are you one of the affiliated services with Bay State?
Bay State Tax.
Okay, so you're one of the 17 identified as affiliates in addition to the licenses Bay State owns?
Yes.
Thank you.
And my concern is that if Bay State, for example, loses 17 licenses, that the only way for them to make up for the income that they will get from that is to raise the fees for me that I give them that for being in their dispatch system to an inordinate amount, as for example, doubling it. And if they double that and I lose one of my numbers with the give back, and I have in tier 1 only one of the other 4, it becomes impossible for me, even if I got a loan, to stay in business, because Bay State will charge me a lot. Now, the problem is also that some of the other companies here, just because it's truth, is the person that thought before me from that they, other than owning licenses or having licenses in Brookline, they own a black car company that is dispatched from them. So for them, it's fantastic. They can get the license, sell it, make the money on it, put all their dispatch into their black cars, and they are really they are fine. But we're not, because now we have to subsidize them going out of business completely from the business industry, and the number of people that are really could be associated with is immediately limited. That becomes extremely difficult for us. So I would like the town to take into consideration that the small people who would be forced to really sell their company. There is no way for us, small people, to get only 1 out of 4 in tier 1, and the rest in tier 2 and 3, and be able to get the loans and have the income that would support the loans. So what it means is that we cannot be in business. I just wanted that to be known, that the other people, yes, they would like to get the medallions. They will sell the medallions. They have the black cars. They make their money on the black cars, and we are left in the lurch. Just a point to be taken.
Okay. Mr. Corain, I'm going to ask Mr. Corain, our staff person here, to answer a question because I am ignorant, and that is, do we have regulatory power over any of these other vehicle services? I mean, they are licensed hackneys, right? Livery? What are they?
What he's referring to are actually livery companies.
Yeah.
In order to start a livery company, you just have to file a DBA at a local town hall, and you get a livery plate from the state. Again, unless you're based out of Brookline or you're operating bases out of Brookline, as of right now, I don't believe we have authority to regulate them. However, we'll be checking with town council. But that is a problem that is faced throughout the entire state. Most liveries actually operate out of Boston. Boston has a very successful Medallion, so does Cambridge as well as Somerville, although they also deal with deliveries as well. But they don't regulate deliveries.
All right, but what he was describing, these black cars are in the livery category. That's really was my question.
Yeah,
Anybody who is not a licensed taxi, isn't it Hackney? What is it? It's a Hackney license, right?
The Hackney license is your taxi license.
Okay.
And
these other kinds of, how many other kinds of services are there?
They call them black cabs, they're
Right.
liveries, or black cars. They're liveries, they're your limos, your town cars, etc.
You have to order them ahead.
Yep.
They make
And
a
they're
scheduled pickup.
Scheduled pickup.
You can't pick them up on the street passing.
Correct.
What are their other limitations?
Unless you use Uber, and then you can get
I want to know, what are the restrictions on these livery services?
It depends on where they're
Not
based.
ours, because presumably we can't.
It depends on where they're based out of. If they're not based out of Brookline, most municipalities do not regulate them.
Okay,
They're
and
regulated on the
let's just say
state
they're
level.
based in Boston. Does Boston do anything
Boston
at all?
does not regulate them right now.
I see.
It's also at a fixed fee, it's not a...
Yeah, no, I just am trying to understand what the distinction between these categories is.
And with respect to our taxi cab companies running liveries out of there, within our taxi business, our current taxi regulations, it says you cannot use the same number, you cannot use the same dispatch for a different company. So if that is the case, then please let me know, and there'll be investigations. We've already investigated one company 2 years ago. They were temporarily shut down. It was a joint investigation with ourselves in Boston, and they got everything cleaned up. However, we have investigated those in the past.
Okay. Selectman Benka?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Todd, could you explain how the dispatch system works in Brookline? I know that you can call Bay State, Red Cab.
Yep, there's actually,
how many-
there's 5 dispatches that are licensed by the Transportation Board. There's Bay State Taxi, Brookline Red Cab, Brookline Town Taxi, Hello Taxi, and then Hazira.
And then, I'm sorry?
Hazira.
Okay, okay.
And either of those 5 you can call and order a cab. And they're different in terms of how they operate are different. Some are still, you call a phone number, they pass it to a radio dispatch. Some are based on digital dispatch using tablets, et cetera.
And do the other company, without getting into specifics, do all of the other companies that are on this list have a relationship with one of those?
They are required to. All the affiliates who don't have a joint dispatch related to their company, they are required to affiliate with a dispatch company.
And do any affiliate with more than one, or are they just affiliated with
As
one?
of right now, they're only affiliated with one. Your vehicles are painted in the same color, so you'll see Bay State Taxi,
Okay,
but it could be owned by Hawley. You'll notice on the door it would say owned, operated by Hawley.
okay. And one of the issues, I'm sort of writing down a number of issues. One is the dispatch issue, which obviously could exist now, but may become more critical in this new regime, and that's the question of sort of favoritism or protection and fees.
Yep.
Do you contemplate that those would be regulated?
Right now, we do not regulate them. We do not regulate the lease rates or the affiliate weekly rates that the affiliates pay. Boston does, as well as other municipalities. It's something that the Transportation Board would look at as they're drafting those regulations.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir, you in the center.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am representing the Azera Cab Company.
Would you mind just giving us your name, please?
My name is Sholademi.
And I hope you signed in, because then we'll get it spelled correctly.
My name is Sholademi A. Animasound.
Thank you.
I am the owner of the Azera Cab Company. But the topic before me is that I have 3 cabs, and I had been in business for 13 years. I started the business before Yellow Cab, before Black Cab. We are having 3 cab company in Brookline before the birth of the Medallion system. I did request from the town of Brookline when and before I started the business. And the former chairman at that time is right here. He was the one who approved the licenses to me. But during the time of the then Mr. David, I requested for more licenses. Then he told me, he said, oh, you know what? You cannot go beyond 3 in the town of Brookline. I said, why? Okay. I kept it on like that. But according to the definition given by Mr. Lacapra, who said that medallion system is a sellable commodity. Okay, if that definition match the information about economics, then what make my own company to remain on 3 licenses for 13 years? And this is the only area in which I want these bodies sitting down here tonight to look into, because they have it in one side of it that you have to turn over 1, you have to keep 1, and you have to pay 125 for whatever the price is. But if we are trying to be balanced, I think before we go into what Mr. Lacabra defined as a sellable commodity, we need to look into that area so that we have to, we should be able to stand up and grow, but not to be fixated at one point, whereby we are not going to be able to spread. I don't want to be washed out of business simply because people have 10, people must have 20, people must have 50 or 75. That is not good. It doesn't reflect America at all. It doesn't. And this is the only area that I want brothers and sisters sitting down here tonight to help us look into before they can finally pass any decision about the issue of medallion system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment?
Sure. Selectman Benka?
Yeah, I would just for future reference as you go forward, with respect to the three companies that have three licenses, they all have a give back of 1, which is really a 33% give back. You know, for the larger companies, 5 or more, it's 20%. It's a give back of 1. And as you get up into the companies with 20, 25, 40, and 77, it's around the 17% average give back. But the give back for these three smaller companies is significantly higher.
Disproportionate, I had observed.
But
I mean, you can round either up or down, but
We can't have them give back a fifth of a medallion or
no, but
No, but the people with 5 are giving it back 4, are giving back 1, and that's preferential treatment.
yeah, and people with 1 are giving back none.
Right.
You know, these guys, there are 3 companies with 3 licenses that I think do get caught in the middle here a little bit.
Actually, what I was observing, and I want to be clear that I'm right about this, not only do they give back 1, but then they get 0 in Tier 2 and have to skip to Tier 3.
Correct, so they get 1 for the $1,000 and then 1 at the market rate.
Right.
Right, which is a disproportionate burden on those small companies in my dumb math calculation.
Yeah, sort of
I'm not
well, if
trying
you-
to do an algorithm here, but that's about where I come out.
I mean, if you compare them to the companies with 5, who get a couple at the Tier 2 level, I don't know, just something to think about a little bit more. All right?
All right, we've got about 5 more minutes for comments, so I will listen to anybody who's an operator. If you're an operator, raise your hand. You had your hand up? Well, he's not an operator, and I gave him a chance, and he didn't speak, sorry.
My name is Amid Al-Kouri. I'm the general manager of Halwa Taxi. I'll be very fast. I manage a fleet of 25 cars. I just would like to say I'm in support of the 3 tiers plan. However, I had a couple concerns moving forward. And we got into this business back in about 10 years ago. And the reason we were brought in is to create competition for Bay State and Red Cab, which were run by the same owners at the time. My concern now, by reducing our fleet to 16 cabs in Tier 1 and Tier 2, eventually will force us to join other companies. And the same thing applies to many other smaller companies. I consider myself one of the bigger company, actually. And so the only thing I ask you to take in consideration that we should maintain a number of cabs in Tier 1 and Tier 2 that allow us to continue operating independently. And that should not create any burden to the town, because eventually we are paying for Tier 1 and Tier 2. And you know, I've raised this argument, and I was told that you're going to maintain operating these cabs, you know, as long as till the town sell them or for further time. But however, after 3 years, when they become Medallion and the town sell them, they will not be available for me to sell. And that eventually, to operate. And that eventually will force me to join other cab companies. And the town will probably end up 1 dispatch service, not 2, 1 dispatch service, and we'll go back to where we started 10 years ago. And the other concern that I had is that the prices in Tier 1 and Tier 2 are, you know, we can argue if they're too high or too low, but they were based on they were valued based on the price of $125,000 an auction price. What I recommend is that these prices for Tier 1 and Tier 2 should stand if the Medallion reach $125,000 in the auction. However, if the price does not reach $125,000, it should be reduced to a percentage of what that number is. And the third concern is that what Daria said from Town Taxi, going forward we should be able to lease these Medallions because the only way we are actually by taking cabs away from us, we're going to have less revenue for the simple fact that we're running a smaller fleet. And we're going to eventually, in 3 years, we're going to have more cost to run the company by financing the Medallion that we have to pay the town for. So by allowing us to run Medallions, we can eliminate some of the cost of repair, maintenance, and car replacement. And that actually also will improve the quality of the cars in the town, since the owner-operator usually, they look better after their car instead of driving somebody else's car. And the last thing I would say that, the whole negotiation process to me felt is who's trying to get more. They come up with something, we counter back with something. We really never met in the middle. I'm not opposing the plan. However, there are minor things should be changed in the plan for us mainly to stay operating independently. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another person, I saw a hand over here. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Maurice Dauphin, and I own the Dauphin cab. I have 5 cabs. I do not support the plan because there's no way I will be able to stay in business if they take 20%, and I end up with a mortgage. As it is, it's tough making it right now. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I appreciate.
Chris Dempsey.
One more. Okay, Mr. Dempsey, you get the final word.
I'll be really quick. Chris Dempsey, member of the Transportation Board, although not speaking on behalf of the Transportation Board in this case. I think, and I'm a big supporter of Mr. Crane and the work that he does working with us on the board, as well as Mr. Sandman, and applaud their efforts, as well as Selectman Goldstein, to get us to where we are. I happen to disagree with the implementation of a medallion system. I think that we're probably so far along at this point that things are likely to happen, and we're likely to move ahead with it. I'd just like to suggest a stance or an approach that we take moving forward, which is to remember that this industry is changing very quickly, and that it could look very different in 5 or 10 or 20 years than it does today. That new services like Uber, and there are many others like it, are offering consumers a really strong choice, one that consumers are electing to take, and that the idea that we might sort of forbid those services from operating in town would really do a disservice to the people that rely on those types of services as part of a balanced transportation system. As we think about that industry changing, we should try to remember that while these will be assets that can be passed on, we should not be thinking of them as something necessarily that you would pass on to your children. These are not going to be birthright assets. We want the town to retain the flexibility to issue more medallions in the future if we feel that there's a demand for more service, or to have other flexibility in the way that we regulate taxi cabs. And so my only thought is that if we move down this road, we think about language that is a little bit more balanced about what these assets represent moving forward, and what that means for the owners of these assets after they've purchased them, what rights they really are buying, and what requirements that puts on the town in terms of issuing more medallions or changing the regulatory structure after those medallions are purchased. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, well, we appreciate how many people have come tonight, and obviously there's a lot of interest in this matter. We're taking no position. We're at the moment listening. We may have some more questions, and we may very well ask for information and have some discussion with members of the Transportation Board and staff. But at the moment, we are not taking an action. So I just want everybody to be clear. We're listening. This is not over yet. We'll probably schedule something on our calendar in the next couple of weeks. But thank you all for coming.
Can I ask Mr. LaCapra one question before we
wrap
up? I have a question for Mr. LaCapra. So we heard from a number of people that they felt that possibly they couldn't continue in business under this system. And I serve as this board's representative on the Council on Aging, and I can tell you that the ability to get cabs in Brookline is critically important for our senior citizens. So in your estimation, are you anticipating a reduction in the number of cabs available to
No,
people, the citizens?
I believe this has been misstated. We are talking about a financial transition when we're talking about going to a medallion system. We are not taking cars off the road. Now, the regulations and the transitions are going to be developed in the next phase. But to use an example, if the town retains so many medallions, that does not mean that we're physically taking cabs off the road. It means that there are a certain number of cabs which, at a certain point, the current owner has an option to buy, or it goes to auction, which means another owner comes and takes that medallion and operates it by regulation as a cab. So the notion of the retainage, I think, has been interpreted incorrectly, so that the town is simply going to stockpile medallions and pull cabs off the road. That is not the intent. So during the transition, the options will exist for certain owners, but there's nothing in the conversion plan that we've put forward that anticipates pulling a third of the cabs off the road in Brookline.
I just want to add one more thing to that. This came up at the Transportation Board meeting, and what the Transportation Board said at that time is that the town may not, and this depends on the selectmen, auction off all of our givebacks. There might be 10 or 15 that are not converted into medallions and sold. The Transportation Board has every intention not to see a drop in the level of service for the taxi cabs, and to allow the current licensees to continue to operate those cabs until we do convert them into medallions as a licensed cab each year. So there will be 185 cabs that are on the road today will be on the road next year and the year after and the year after. Even after we go through this process, even if they're not all sold as medallions, the Transportation Board intends to allow them to be continue to be operated.
So there will be people who will have licenses and not have to buy the medallions?
Correct. If the town does not choose to auction off all of our give back medallions, the Transportation Board's main concern is ensuring the level of service within the taxi industry. So to give you an example, Bay State Taxi's give back is 13.
Right.
I'm going off because it's the first one number I see. If we only auction off 10 of those and there's 3 left, we'll allow Bay State, if they want, to continue operating those as licenses.
Okay.
Now, if Bay State doesn't want to, then Red Cab or Hazara or any of the others could take that option as well. Our main goal on the transportation side is to ensure the continuity and level of service.
Yeah. What I heard, Nancy, was from Hello Taxi and also the smaller operators was not necessarily that the number of cabs would drop, but that they would not be able to survive, and that what you might see is a concentration or a reconcentration of the industry.
Right.
And I gather that was something that in the past we were concerned about, and I don't know how realistic that those concerns are at this point, whether you've thought about those, but I didn't hear people saying there aren't going to be cabs on the road. They're just saying I couldn't operate with this reduced number of cabs.
Yeah, there have been discussions on whether we would see it go back to a one-company system. And both consultants, Mr. LeCapra and Mr. Shaler, have said that the Brookline industry would best be served by 3 to 4 dispatches, not the 5 that we currently have, in order to provide the level of service. So we do expect some condensing. However, nobody that has looked at this has reasonably said that it's going to go back to a one cab company. It's been discussed in the Transportation Board. Mr. LeCapra, Mr. Shaler have all said that that's not a reality that they expect to happen.
Just One final comment.
The final,
One
absolute.
final. With these new
Take your mic away.
Uber-type services, to the extent that they are filling gaps in the industry, or they're providing some of the services that traditional taxi cabs used to provide, and we recognize it as a reality and don't prohibit them or try to regulate them or don't have the authority to regulate them, you might reduce the number of taxi cabs on the street to maintain the value of the ones that remain. Rather than have the same number of cabs out there plus these other services and insufficient business for the taxi operators.
Let me just respond on behalf of the seniors and say, probably a few of them have smartphones, but not all that many.
No, I know, and I completely agree that there's a balance that has to be struck, and you certainly want taxi cabs to be available when people call for a taxi, if they don't have a smartphone. On the other hand, you don't want to
I think the important conclusion that I would reach is that there are unanswered questions, and we've got a list, and we're going to put them together, and we will continue this conversation in consultation with the Transportation Board and Transportation staff till we get all the answers. So,
I think there are a number of questions.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for coming. We're going to move on to the next item on the calendar, which is an increase in outside seating for Jimmy's.
Hello.
Hi.
James Hammelberg, owner of 1653 Beacon Street. Jimmy
Right,
Barn,
and we have a plan indicating that there is space on the sidewalk, actually within your own boundary, I think.
Correct.
That would permit you to have 10 tables, which would permit also 20 seats. And I believe this has been approved by the DPW and the public safety folks. So I don't personally have any particular question about it. Is there any question from members of the board? Yes, Selectman Binka?
Yeah, just one very quick question.
Sure.
You now show 4 tables of 4 seats each, so that's the 16. You're going to 10 tables of 2 seats?
Well, at the beginning of the night, in a perfect world, they're lined up in a certain
Right,
way.
and then they
At the end
they
of the
could
night,
morph.
They morphed into
okay, but there would be
3s
10
and 4s
smaller
and 6s.
tables that could be pulled together, and
Correct.
and you will stay within the existing boundary. You have the room to do that.
Yes, I do.
Good. Okay.
Yes, Selectman
I'm
Goldstein?
sorry, but I don't understand where these other tables are going to fit. We've got the plan that shows those tables are the size of chairs.
good.
Those.
Each of these are.
I think what you,
A table in between.
yeah, I think it would sort of split.
It really doesn't show the 10 tables on the plan that we have.
This is a table. This is 4 chairs on the table, right?
Right.
Right.
When I look at this, Jim.
He's saying those are really two little tables pushed together.
I'm assuming, personally, I just simply drew a line down the middle of the table and assumed that was, instead of 1 table with 4, it was 2 tables with each 2. That's how I did it in my head.
See, it's like 2 tables with 2.
No, I still don't see it. I'm sorry. 10 tables? So you're telling me that each one of these big tables shown on your plan are actually 2 tables?
All the tables are the same size.
All right, so.
No, I know, but you've got them as drawn on your plan.
They're
It looks like
large.
4 tables. You want to come over here for a
Sure.
second, and you can probably explain this to me. Is that 1 table?
Well, they're actually 2.
So it's not drawn accurately, so there's this, so is that 2 tables?
There you go.
That's how it currently is?
Right.
Okay, now let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So
5,
each
6,
of the
7,
ones
8.
that's on the print,
Do you have this with, it shows the 4 other chairs?
Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah, no, I've
Yeah.
got it, but
I have a
just
question
in
though.
counting,
When-
I see 4 tables.
When I look at this and the additional seats you want to put in the tables, look like they're right in front of your handicapped accessible doorway.
No, not correct. There is more room than what shows in those plans. I could probably.
This is your
fit-
guy that drew
I
the
know,
plans, right?
There's more room for more tables and chairs there.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that
I didn't want to be a pig and ask for 8 or 10 more tables. I thought that, an extra 2 tables would be reasonable. We do have a wait every night in the summertime. It's nice to think about outdoor seating right now after
Okay,
after
I just want to
daylight
make sure
today.
though that you're
Yeah, we have plenty of
conscientious
room.
about making sure handicapped people can get into your establishment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As they're discussing that, the problem arises
It's just not the way it was
because
drawn, so.
whoever drew this drew in the 4 additional seats in the walkway into your outside seating area and also in front of the doorway
It's
to your
confusing the way it
building.
looks. I agree.
And, I would add a condition that a free passageway should be maintained to the handicapped accessible doorway as a condition of this.
Do you have any objection to that, if you say you have actually more room than appears on this plan?
Oh, I have absolutely no objection. I think
Okay.
that's very reasonable.
Okay.
all right, then are we satisfied that there is space for a total of 10 tables with 20 seats?
Yes.
And that that I will move that we approve the application of James Hemmelberg doing business as Jimmy's at 1653 Beacon Street for an increase in outside seating from 16 to 20 seats with the condition that the accessible entrance has a clear passage, is not blocked, and passage to the accessible entrance is clear. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the board. I
Pray
appreciate it.
for the end of snow.
Yes.
Would love to sit outside and have a seasonal meal. Okay, next is Whole Foods, where I believe we did not get a plan
Looks like we might see one.
in my packet. Got lots of information, but not a plan.
Well, it's a very small plan, it's hard to read.
Oh, really?
Is there one?
You're right. Oh, you're right. I just couldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening.
Welcome. I just want to key what I've got to what you've got, and so I'm assuming now what I did not realize was exterior must be that little bump that's in the plan on the right.
I'm going to bring it up to you so you can see
No,
it.
no, I've got it here, but I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at the same thing, that's all.
Yes, so the bump that you see on this plan
Yep.
is the outdoor facing area.
Right, okay. We have a sort of badly reproduced, sorry, version.
Happy to walk you through it.
Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mike Scott. I'm an attorney with Nutter, McLennan & Fish.
I'm here tonight representing Whole Foods. With me tonight are 3 members of the Whole Foods team. Rick Bonin, who is the Vice President of Operations for Whole Foods, Bob Donnelly, who is the Executive Coordinator of Development and Construction, and Jim Strain, who is a Project Manager. As we've been discussing, we're here to evaluate Whole Foods' application for a common victor's license for some outdoor seasonal seating. The outdoor seating is really replacing, in part, the seating that the former Johnny's Foodmaster had, but in a different configuration. We've vetted this plan with the town staff as well as the boards, and met with the planning board and received a site plan approval. But I'll explain to you where the seating is. The seating is in this area here. It's wholly within private property. You can see that the town's sidewalk is just here. The seating is located on composite wood decking, and the composite wood decking was put in primarily to improve the aesthetic quality of the exterior of the building, as well as provide easy access for handicap and other people to be able to use this ramp right into the front door. So the seating and the entrance to the door is accessible to handicap individuals. Just wanted to note a couple of things, that Whole Foods does have 22 stores in Massachusetts with CB licenses issued. As I mentioned, all of the changes have been approved by the town. We met 2 times with the planning board, and the planning board had some great suggestions after the first meeting, and they had suggested we reconfigure the deck, the entranceways, and some of the seating as well, which we did. And right around the time that we submitted the CV application, we got the approval from the planning board, and so some of it's changed a little bit, but it's reflected here. And so we've asked for an application a total of 8 tables with 26 seats. But as a result of the reconfiguration of the platform or the deck, the planning board thought it was nice to have a counter in this area. Again, just to activate that area a bit more. So included within our application here tonight, we'd like to seek approval for an additional 9 stools to just pull up to the counter in this area just to the left.
9 stools outside or inside?
Outside.
Okay.
So it's 26 seats plus 9 stools, if I got that right?
That's correct.
Could you hand me the plan?
Sure.
While you're looking, actually, as you look at the plan, without those stools, that area would be sort of dead.
That's what we thought.
There's,
Yeah, I know.
It's not
It's actually
clear.
on this drawing. It's just the drawing is so bad, I couldn't make it out.
not clear what it would be used for. Did you have tables there at one point?
Initially, when we first went into the planning board, we had put the tables in that corner, and they felt as if we'd have better access if we put an entrance ramp there, and then perhaps closed off one of the existing entranceways to the right side of the building.
Okay.
And then you could get more seating perhaps around the right side, but then have a nice a counter space where you'd otherwise have the access that was provided in the first plan.
Okay. What?
Go ahead, they're talking.
Okay. You've got now essentially 35 seats outside during nice weather. What happens during inclement weather, during the winter, where you've still got the same prepared food operation, I assume, going on?
That's correct.
And what will happen then?
So the prepared food it's not really oriented towards eating on site, but we found that people wanted to eat on site, so we began to provide facilities for customers to eat on site. But for the most part, during the winter time, people are going in, getting prepared foods and bringing them back to their homes.
Okay.
And is there a waitress service or anything of that
No,
nature?
it's really just an accommodation for being able to, if you choose, to be able to consume the food on site as opposed to bring it back to your home.
And what kind of responsibilities are there for bussing the table afterwards and keeping keeping the area neat?
Well, the store manager regularly is, as well as the staff, are reviewing the area, making sure there's no litter. We have receptacles outside and inside the store for people to place their litter. And so it'll be just basically managed because it is the front door to the store, and it's in the company's best interest to make sure that that area is kept tidy and clean. And we have in our application as well, sort of our protocol for dealing with litter, addressing litter.
There's not somebody permanently stationed there to supervise activity out on the
No,
deck?
not that I'm aware of.
Well, I can say, Selectman Goldstein, I'm familiar at least with the Brighton Whole Foods, which has a couple of tables that are outside, not this many, and certainly it's much more casual. I'm guessing this is much more modeled on what they do when they have space for interior seating, which I've also seen in other locations.
Yeah, you know, we're doing it inside and outside where we have enough room where it doesn't look cluttered. You know, at Charles River, for example, we have a lot of seating at Charles River because a much bigger prepared food area, and because the hospital is located there. Recently in Jamaica Plain, we had put in outdoor seating there. We have in-store seating and some indoor seating in Jamaica Plain as well. And you can see from the plan, I think, you know, that with the decking, it provides for an orderly display of all the tables. It doesn't look crowded at all, in my view.
Are you thinking of some sort of awning or roof cover?
There's an awning there now, but we're not planning on changing the awning. It doesn't extend out over the
Right.
the
No,
deck.
no, I was, or umbrellas, or, I don't know.
This is public comment. There's some neighbors here.
Yeah, but Selectman Daley has a
Oh,
hand
well,
up.
I wanted to ask you, there were some conditions that Johnny's Foodmaster had been operating under, set by the town, and in addition, there have been several proposed additional conditions, which I understand were actually that Johnny's had been adhering to in practice. Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes, I have. We've met with some of the neighbors in the back, and there were some concerns about parking and lighting and noise, and so we've been provided the conditions that Johnny's was adhering to. All of them are fine with us, and we've been presented with 4 additional concerns and potential conditions, and we're okay with those as well.
Okay.
So you have, I don't know if you have our packet, but if we incorporated everything on 11-2 and 11-3, it's one page begins SFD 060154, 1028 Beacon Street conditions.
Yeah, the version I have is SFD 050177.
All right.
Okay.
And there are a total of 5 conditions.
5 numbered.
Okay, all right.
Just to make, I want you to have the opportunity to look at what we have. And Nancy, you just.
I just gave it to you.
Right. So it's 11-2 and 11-3. And if you just, we'll hear from the abutters, but during that time, if you just make sure that that conforms to what you're agreeing to.
Maybe we could take some comments while he's reviewing that.
It looks like the same conditions.
Okay.
And just one question on the no seating is allowed unless approved by inspectional departments. I suspect that's just a health department, is that correct?
Well, presumably, it would mean that our health department and/or DPW depends. I mean, your seating that you've proposed is within your property. If you
So they don't
crossed over the line onto the public way, the Department of Public Works has to approve it.
And I expect building will approve the safety of the decking.
Right.
Okay.
And you'd have to have, I mean, those are the normal
So it's
code compliance conditions.
It's primarily the health department.
Right.
And I will say that, just following up on I think a line that Ken was looking at, this is, in a sense, almost a restaurant out there. I mean, you're not serving food to people, but there are a lot of seats out there, and people will be able to bring food out. And I know that one of the conditions is that a trash receptacle is placed and regularly maintained. I wonder whether either there should be some condition that the litter be picked up, or and I think most people probably in Brookline and Whole Foods customers are probably going to be pretty good about taking their plates
containers,
and their non-polystyrene containers,
Right.
and putting them into trash receptacles, but
You're going to get a crowd for Red Sox games, that's what I think
Yeah.
he's getting at.
and we can sort of see how things go and deal with this at the next
I will say
licensing.
that I shop at the Brighton Whole Foods, and I know they keep the place
Yeah.
Right, that's really
spruced
where I was
up.
going, yeah.
I was actually going to suggest a condition for regular supervision at intervals of not less than 15 minutes or something like that, while the space is in use.
Yeah, have you dealt with this with this quantity of outside seating at any of your other locations, and do you have a policy to deal with
And
it?
I just want to make it clear that what you're hearing from us is that in similar places where there's this volume number of outside seats, it's waiter service. And so we know that someone will come and clear, and there aren't going to be containers with unfinished food left sitting or knocked down onto the sidewalk. So what we're really saying to you is that it is not comparable to other outdoor seating that we normally approve, okay?
So, Rick, do you want to speak to this?
Hi, I'm Rick Bonin with Whole Foods Market, Vice President for the North Atlantic Region. In reference to outdoor seating, most similarly, we have a location in Dedham, Legacy Place, outdoor seating, probably in the neighborhood of 220. It's not wait staff maintained. In Brookline, what we will have is we'll have 3 full-time maintenance folks, as we call them, porter service, that are in our employ, that will be, responsible for the overall condition of the store, and certainly the exterior conditions. Protecting the brand is important to us, and protecting the neighborhood, very important to us, and this is in the front doors of the store, so I can assure you won't have concerns there. And it's part of the team in that store will be in the neighborhood of 80 team members. When it was at Johnny's, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, 40. So it'll be a much larger team operating that store. And, we definitely are concerned with and pay particular attention to cleanliness in and out of the store. So I can assure you that it's on our radar, and it's a team that we're dedicated in our store. We call that maintenance team, or clean team, as we actually call it, that will address exterior and interior at all times.
Okay, does that satisfy, or do you want to make some sort of written condition?
Ken, I kind of leave that up to you, but I think if this really does become a litter problem and a trash problem, we're going to see them again at the annual
At Renewal.
licensing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, certainly.
It's true.
Well, so you want to
Well, let's hear
provide
the
a,
rest of this.
all right. And I gather Mr. Allen has represented some abutters. I don't know if you want to speak on their behalf, or they want to come up and comment individually, or in chorus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name's Robert Allen. I have a law practice at 300 Washington Street here in Brookline Village, and I want to compliment these gentlemen for working so closely with the neighborhood. I'm here representing Steve Keynes is the person here. There's been a number of neighbors, particularly behind there, that are very concerned about really keeping the status quo. Before I get into that, one thing that the board may want to consider relative to Mr. Goldstein's, there's been a past practice to have a applicant enter into a litter control plan that's filed with the health department that just sort of lays out, here's how many guys we're going to have, here's how long we're going to do it.
They submitted one to us.
Yeah. So that sometimes can work to alleviate your concerns. We're quite confident, being familiar with their other location, that they will be a good neighbor there. You know, the area behind here has been an area of real concern, and for any of you that have had the opportunity to go back there, you know, active parking back there could be a significant problem. So we were very pleased. Mr. Strain and Mr. Scott have been incredible to deal with, and they've agreed to the conditions. Whole Foods at this location is going to be a great for all the neighborhood. This is clearly more of a neighborhood market than it is anything, as Johnny's and the prior supermarkets have shown. So we're very happy that Whole Foods is there. We're very happy that they've entered in condition, and we thank the board for allowing us to speak here tonight and move forward, and can't wait for them to open. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we're probably ready to take a vote, and I think we would like to incorporate into our vote.
Mr. Lynn Jones, who's here, wanted to speak.
Oh, Mr. Lynn Jones is not represented by the group.
I'm Sean Lynn Jones, a town meeting member from Precinct 1, and I live at 53 Monmouth Street, just a little bit more than a block from the site of the store. And I just want to say, basically, thank you to all of those who've been working on this proposal, from the planning board to the team from Whole Foods, as well as the Department of Planning and Community Development. This has moved quickly, which is of great relief to the neighbors, and the process has improved the proposal, including the conditions that will address the concerns of the abutters behind the building. And I know that area very well, having rented a parking space in that lot for many years. I'm all too familiar with the parking and egress situation. Luckily, I don't park there anymore. And I just wanted to say, regarding this litter control issue, I can assure you that I'm optimistic that it will be under control, but the town meeting members and the neighbors will certainly be watching that to see how it works out, and we hope that the outdoor seating doesn't create a nuisance, but just adds to the vibrancy of that block. There are wide sidewalks, and this brings people to them. It works out well, and that's a great addition to the area. Thank you.
Okay. I think we probably want to take two separate votes. One is for the common victualler license, and with that, we can attach the conditions that are on, now I've lost my page with the conditions page.
Can I just say, because I think we all had an email from a BU student who was interested in this application, that they are not seeking a liquor license, and you're not intending to seek a liquor license?
That's correct.
Yes.
I responded to that BU
Okay.
student.
Yeah, so did I. Okay, so first, I'll move that we approve the application of Whole Foods Market Group, Rick Bonin, Vice President, for a common victualler license at 1026, 1028 Beacon Street, with the conditions as stated on the document, and I'm going to use the document in our packet 11-2 and 11-3. All in favor? Sorry?
Could I, before we complete that, could I add 11-14, which is the letter from Whole Foods regarding the litter letter?
Okay, but we normally don't do that, but if you want to.
Also, there's 1131 and 1134. 1131 is the Health Department recommended conditions?
It's not necessary. They have to accept those conditions. We don't ever do that.
Okay.
I resist
okay.
additional.
11, okay.
But if you want to put the
1134 simply is the DPW's.
We don't normally do any of that.
Okay.
It's assumed that they will comply.
Okay.
They are being licensed.
1114.
All right. The only one that is unusual would be 1114, and that's because we're concerned about the,
He's asking to put the litter letter that you provided to
Right.
us.
basically,
onto the
this
conditions
is
of the
to address the situation of unweight-served outdoor seating with 26 seats, all right? So we're adding your letter, which agrees to have a litter receptacle, et cetera, as one of the conditions
That's
of the
fine with
vote,
us.
okay?
Good.
So, common victualler with the conditions that are on page 11-2, and we would attach the letter on page 11-4.
14.
Sorry, 14, 11-14.
And 11-3.
Yeah, pages 11-2, 3, and 11-14.
Good.
All right, I think we got it all. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And then I will move that we approve the application of Whole Foods Market Group for a seasonal outdoor seating at 1026, 1028 Beacon Street, and the time frame for that, I believe, is April 15th through
October 15th.
October 15th. All in favor, please say
Do you want
aye.
to say that our agenda said the 26 seats, and they have the additional 9 stools?
Okay, 26 seats plus 9 stools. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, we look forward to having you open.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, when?
What is the,
We're anticipating April 15th.
Aha, okay, with outdoor seating.
For the marathon.
yeah, could I, before
If the
you
snow
leave,
stops.
before you leave, the weather is actually still nice after October 15th in many cases, and I'm sort of wondering why you're,
I think that's our guidelines for
Those are our
outside seating.
guidelines, they can come back.
Is that when we shut it?
Yeah, normally.
Okay.
You should join the licensing committee.
Keep me on the straight and narrow.
Thank you very much for your time. We
All right,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Good night.
Just while they're leaving, if there is nice weather, can people come in and extend that period, or do they
Yeah,
have
they
to?
can.
Well, I don't think,
Do they have to
if
come
people
back
come
to
in
us?
and sit in their seats, I don't think that, I mean, because this is different where
This
they're
is-
providing waitresses to go outside.
Yeah.
They're just
Do we-
seats.
But
So,
do
they're
we
just gonna-
enforce an October 15th?
Yeah,
Deadline?
normally,
Do we
yeah.
really?
Right, right, I mean, I don't think
But
we
who's
go
going
around.
to stop people from going to sit in those seats when there's no
No,
wait
but
service?
for example, in a restaurant, do
Yeah.
we
I don't know.
close them down?
I don't know.
If we did, it would be the DPW, because typically, Dick, they're not on private land, they're on public ways. It would somewhat
Okay.
depend, but I think if people came and asked us for an extension, we would not unreasonably refuse.
No, I've never noticed that cutoff date before.
I think it's, well, it's worth checking, but I think it's just standard, April to October.
Okay.
Okay, we still now have an application for a transfer of EMAC and Bolios at 1663 Beacon Street. Is there anyone here to represent EMAC and Bolio? Okay, you are
Cagle.
You are the transferor.
I am the new person.
Okay, sorry, transferee, I meant to
Yes,
say.
yeah, I'm not quite
The
sure which way it
recipient,
goes.
the receiving person.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and I gather you have experience operating ice cream operations?
Correct.
In other locations? And seems to me we've got a litter letter from you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kagan?
It's Cagle, K-A-G-E-L.
Kegel, oh, we've got you spelled
Yes,
various
I
ways.
know.
I'm so sorry about that.
That's
So
all right.
you are Kegel, not Kager or Kagan or any of those other Kagans. All right.
Correct.
I apologize.
That's all right.
We'll get it right on the license.
Right. All right. Actually, I see in your handwritten application, it is spelled correctly. You know how to spell your name. Okay. And we're assuming that the operation will basically be unchanged from its
Yeah, no
current.
changes at all.
Okay.
No change to the availability of Deep Purple Cow.
No, that's always going to be there.
Okay.
And we repainted a little bit, touched it up.
Then I move that we approve the application of TGMK LLC, doing business at Emack and Bolio's, Stuart Cagle, owner, for a common victular license at 1663 Beacon Street. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Hope for warm weather.
Yes, right.
This is brutal. But it's
End
gotta
of snow.
change, right?
Any of you remember the original Emack and Bolio's in Coolidge Corner in the basement there?
Yeah,
From the
right.
60s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember the original
Thank you. Good
Steve's
luck.
ice cream
Thank you.
in Somerville.
Yeah, I used to go. stand
Goes
in
way
line there.
back. All right, and next we have an application for a food vendor license, which I gather is a change from common victular at 8 Cypress Street. If you'd come forward, please, and identify yourself. Are you?
My name is Corey Sargut.
Sargut, okay. And you are going to be operating only as a takeout operation?
Yes, I'm going to keep the same license as Manjit did.
Right, except they had a common victular license, which it permits eating on the premises. If you have a food vendor license, you cannot serve people on the premises. They have to take it away. You understand that?
Yes, but I want to put the seat too, but they didn't let me.
The seats are illegal. You're not allowed to have seats unless they're approved. And my guess is the reason that the seating previously was not approved is it didn't meet the either space, the building department has said that the seats were not approved. And so if you were to get the building department to approve the allowed seating, that would be different, but it's not approved.
Do you want to see if you can have seats before
Yes, I spoke with the building department. They told me that I can allow to put 10 seats, but after the hearing, I can go apply for it.
I don't understand what he wants.
So the building department told you that you cannot have seats now, but after a hearing?
Yeah, after the hearing, because the previous owner, he has like 10 or 11 seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I can, I didn't have the seats, and then the building department told me I'm not allowed to put any seats, and then the table, I take all the tables out and put in the basement. And I spoke with Mr. Michael from the building department.
Mike Yanovich?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And he told me that in the future I can apply for the CV license for 10 seats.
Okay, so what they're telling you, I believe, just so that we understand, is that at this time, there is not any approved seating. In order for you to be in business to prepare and sell food, you can apply for a food vendor license, which will allow you to prepare and sell food.
for people to
For
take
people
out?
to take away. You could then apply for a common victular license with seating, but that would mean that the building department and the health department must approve how many tables and chairs you can have. So you can do that afterwards, but right now, if you are approved for a food vendor license, you can still prepare and sell for
I don't
takeaway.
understand why he didn't apply for a CV license.
Because apparently he's transferring the license and the current license
The
has
front page
unapproved
says-
seating.
Front page says location is presently licensed as a common victualler.
But it can't be because it has illegal seating. Read the building department.
I don't know what basis,
No.
the seating is not allowed. Is it maybe because of
I
a
don't
building
know.
code issue, or
I don't know.
because the board never licensed it as a?
Well, I'm just wondering if he wants to spend the money to get are you wanting to start immediately? Because it seems like,
You've bought the business already?
Yes, I
Yeah.
Because it seems like spending the money to get a license to do the food vendor, and then having to start all over again and spend the money to get a CV license.
Do we-
Seems to not make sense to me, but.
Do we have a zoning bylaw handy that we could get?
I don't think that's going to answer the
Well,
question.
there's, the use as a store of less than 5,000 square feet is permitted as of right under use 29. I'm just curious as to whether, I'm looking at 13-23.
Right, and what it says is, the application is for a food vendor license. It become to our attention that the establishment has unauthorized seating. Records on file with the building department show there is no authorization for seating at this location. So in order for them to come as a common victualler, he has to have authorized seating. He can't get it without authorized seating.
That's at odds with the first page. Who drafted
No,
the
no, no, no,
first
no,
page?
no. You're not understanding. The place is presently licensed as a common victualler. What the building department is saying, the new owner is eliminating the seating. It's now a food vendor. If he applies for a common victualler license, he has to get approval for seating, which is not currently approved. I don't
Right,
know
but
why,
my
but the
question
fact
is-
is the former owner had illegal seating.
Okay, but are you open already?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so then
He wants to sell pizzas.
You need the food vendor license.
To sell pizza,
I
right.
was trying to save you the money from having to apply all over for a second kind of license.
Dick, I don't think it's
If you're
zoning.
already
I think it's
operating,
gonna
then
be
you need
building
a
code.
food vendor license until you can go through the process to get a CV license.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but I think it's in his interest for us to approve this now because he needs to be licensed in order
Yes.
to sell food, okay? All right, regardless of anything else, which we may be able to resolve this.
Yeah, use 29 is grocers, bakers, food stores. Use 30 is restaurants, basically, lunchroom, restaurant, cafeteria. And the building department puts this under 29. So I think we will license this as a food vendor, and you should talk to Mike right away and get the approval that's necessary for seating, and then come back. Do we,
Yes,
are
I
we going to
think
put him
that's
through another application fee?
I don't think we can answer that right now.
Yeah.
I really don't think we have enough information. I think what we can do, though, is approve a food vendor license so he
Yeah.
can be in business. All right, then I move that we approve the application of Sargut Firidin Enterprises doing business as Grano at number 8 Cypress Street for a food vendor license. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And I'm very sorry about this confusion, but we will try to make sure the building department will help you understand what's necessary in order for you to be able to be approved as a common victualler. Okay?
Good.
Anyway, you're a food vendor now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, finally,
Thank you.
execute the warrant. I would like to execute it. Do I have permission to use a hatchet, or what other weapon would
Whatever your
you
weapon of
recommend?
choice is. Yep. So just very briefly, 24 articles. First 8 are your standard 8 at an annual, including the budget for 14. 9 through 14 are all general bylaw. A couple relate to human relations, youth resources. Numbers 15 through 18 are various zoning items that have come all from the planning department. 19, 20, and 21 are all related. They have to do with some work, proposed work at the Coolidge Corner Theater. And 22 and 23 are the 2 resolutions that are on the warrant for this year. this annual. And that's it.
Okay, are there any questions with regard to the warrant for the May annual town meeting? Hearing none, I move that we approve and execute the warrant for the May 28th, 2013 annual town meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And I believe that concludes the business of the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, March 19th, which I believe is the first day of spring.
And is it next week, you said, we're meeting on
Next Board of Selectmen's meeting will be on Wednesday, March 27th.